brought Pauper text to the party. Pauper. I brought Pauper text to the party.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 51 of the PDH Pod, the one and only Magic the Gathering podcast dedicated to the total exploration of the Pauper Commander format. I am your host, Liam, and let's see what my co-hosts from the Belagard Coast are up to. First up, Dave, the Alcadron. How are you things?
Things are okay. We're having a whole week. I kind of lured myself into this false sense of security by getting really excited that school is almost over, and then I had the long weekend, and then Tuesday happened, and I was like, oh no, school is still happening.
Wait,
what about
stuff?
all those daydreams? I still have weeks left. I still have to work. It was catastrophic betrayal.
Yeah, I also felt myself doing that this weekend. 6 more days. That's all it is.
TikTok.
And up next, our resident Orzhov Pontiff, Brad. How are you doing?
Hey, Liam, what's up? I am doing great. Man, we got 15 hours of sunshine a day now, and I'm absolutely loving it. I don't know. This is
awesome.
my absolute favorite time of year, and I can't get enough of it. I wish every day was like this.
Wish every day was 15 hours of sunshine.
I do. 80 degrees, 15 hours of sunshine. It's just awesome. You go to bed and the sun's just now setting, and you wake up and the sun's already up. That's what I want all the time.
Yeah.
I can't get enough
Definitely can agree with that.
So,
well, this week we've got a very special guest on the show. The Earl of the early game, the master of the mid game, the lord of the late game, Papa Ryan. We first had him on way back in episode 6. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, do that now. We will wait until you're done. But Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me on the show. The last time we gathered was so much fun. That was a great chance to, I believe we talked a little bit about Pauper 60 card as it related to Pauper Commander, if my memory is serving me right. And it's just a total pleasure to be back here. I remember just a moment ago when I hopped in the Discord, it was like, yes, we're back. Get to chat with you all in the flesh. Some of my favorite people in this space. So
absolutely.
Huge gratitude for having you on. Or having me on again, and having you on. That's right, exactly. Yeah.
I see how it is.
When content creators come together, we always forget who's on whose show.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for having us, Ryan.
Yes, exactly.
What's new in Magic?
That's right. It all starts to blend together. I actually
just
recently looked back, and over the last 6 months, I've done 113 live streams. And which averages something almost one every 2 days, and that doesn't include the edited footage. And so sometimes this stuff blurs together. It's just the way the nature of the beast when it comes to content creation. The grind never stops.
I would imagine.
I feel you.
113 streams in 118 days, 180 days.
Yeah,
that's a lot
for sure. But
You're cooking though, man. You guys have been doing some awesome stuff.
Thank you. You know, it's been so exciting working with other bright minds in the format. For those of you who have seen some of my live streams, I've had a chance to work with some really brilliant deck builders, and I've found my brain has been expanding a lot in those spaces because I'm learning things all the time from people who do other kinds of Magic better than I do. And one of those people I want to shout out is Derek from the RC, who is really a savant deck builder, and he and I now we think very similarly because he's, invited me to explore some of these spaces, particularly in aggro, and exploring some of these concepts resource advantage as opposed to card advantage. And so if you have a chance, definitely check those out, and make sure to follow him on Twitter. His takes are hot and often accurate. So definitely great.
He is accurate very often.
Yeah, that's right. But in terms of weather here, man, it is sunny. It is lovely. I've been enjoying summer as much as I possibly can, and my days are busy. I get home from work, I want to get outside, and then we're back to live streaming again. So it's yesterday it was 9 till 2 in the morning. It was crazy. So.
Yeah, it's a long day.
Well, before we get on to the main topic for this week, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. If you like the show and like what we're doing here, check us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/thepdhpod. A big thanks to Jake S. for their increased pledge. By being a Patreon, you get access to the pre-show, which is almost like an unscripted bonus episode every week, and who doesn't want that? Brad posts the episode on Patreon before it goes out live, along with the show notes, so you can follow along with what the heck we're talking about. And finally, you get access to the PDH Pod Discord, where you can chat with the crew, get help with your decks, or help me build a mono white deck from the ground up. You can also check out the PDH Pod on YouTube, and you can catch Saturday streams on twitch.tv/thepdhpod. And speaking of cool places to watch some PDH, in about 3 weeks, the weekend of June 23rd, we will be in Livonia, Detroit at RIW Hobbies for a whole weekend of Pauper Commander action. A whole ton of awesome community members will be there from all over the country, so you should try to make it and come say hi. I believe that the entire PDH Pod crew will be there, and I think Ryan's going to be there as well.
I think
That is right. I haven't actually announced this officially, but for those of you who haven't heard it here, we'll do the debut. We'll do the announcement. I will be flying to Detroit to hang out. It's gonna be so much fun to meet everyone. I'm so excited for this.
So lit.
It's gonna be
it's gonna be a
insanely
blast.
lit. It's gonna be 3 days of nonstop Pauper Commander, and I am so here for it. It's gonna be super cool to meet, your viewers, some of my viewers, patrons, everybody out there. So definitely, if you've got a chance and you don't have your tickets yet, the tickets are getting a little spendy. So get on it and get out there. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, RIW months ago they announced a 1K PDH paper tournament at their shop, and we as a community turned it into a festival.
Yes, yeah, I think it's fair that we can say that this is literally PDH Con, and they haven't called it that.
Have to be.
RIW, if you're hearing this, and next year you want some marketing materials made for you, I will go hard.
Yes. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, no doubt.
And finally, this week in Magic, Brad, what do you got for us?
Well, we actually do have a little bit of this week in Magic. Lord of the Rings spoilers have started, but we're not going to talk about that for a couple weeks. And the other big news is the PDH Pod is now finally on Twitter. So go ahead and give us a follow. And you guessed it, just like everything else, we are just twitter.com/@thepdhpod. So hit us up. We're not even 24 hours old yet, so we're just trying to amass some followers, get some content posted, all that good stuff. So check us out over there as well.
Yep. And for those curious about the PDH Pod Twitter account, Brad's on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. Alcadron's not on Twitter. Is this just a front to get him on Twitter? We don't know.
We don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
We don't know sounds like a really diplomatic way of saying yes.
Like to be determined.
The word,
but you will. You can expect all three of us to be posting from that account.
Oh no! That was a yes.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
Not that I'm encouraging anybody to be on Twitter. The place is a mixed
rough.
bag. It's like I've never been a Twitter user. I only use it because it allows me to pump my content out to more people. But what is that tag? Because I'm trying to follow you guys right now. It's at what?
The PDH Pod.
PDH Pod.
Okay.
Yep. We're brand new on the Twitter sphere.
All right. And for this week's main topic, we're going to talk about some mid-range. This week, we've brought Ryan on to help us work our way through some decks that exemplify this, honestly, sometimes hard to pin down archetype. Each of us has picked a couple of decks to go over, but this isn't going to be your traditional 3x3 or 4x4 deck dive that you're used to. It's going to be more of a high altitude macro approach. We're going to be talking very broadly about how the decks we've chosen function by first establishing some pillars, because here at the PDH Pod, we love our pillars, and then we'll be touching on how they achieve said results. Speaking of pillars, Dave, do you want to run us through what mid-range pillars look like?
I would be delighted to tell you
You're
what
so
I
good
think
at it.
are the pillars of mid-range. So the rest of this episode, we're going to structure it like a standard issue 4x4, but it's going to be one of those really high altitude 4x4s, because we're not really talking about a deck strategy like Voltron or aggro, or not aggro, Voltron or Aristocrats or something like pretty specific. We're talking about one of the really broad overarching archetypes, which is mid. And so we're trying to go.
For those dedicated listeners, you might remember this structure from November when we talked about combo, or February when we talked about aggro.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is
This
is the next installment of that series. Very high altitude 3x3s, or in this case, a 4x4. So we're going to go through the pillars of pretty pretty broad, pretty general pillars of what makes a deck a good mid-range deck, and then we're each going to talk about a couple of different decks that we feel really exemplify these ideas, so that we can get a sense of how the different decks are going to approach accomplishing these quintessential pillars of mid-rangeness. Because numbers are fake, we're going to start with pillar number 2. Pillar number 2 is how to apply pressure without dying.
Very
so this
important.
is hopefully the not dying is going to come up more later, but we want to be not dying while we apply pressure. So this is
Yes.
going to be like in what ways is your mid-range deck going to behave like an aggro deck sometimes? Because you do want to be applying that pressure. You have to be able to murk out the control decks, the combo decks, the late game decks. You have to be able to murk them out before they hit their late game stride. So that pressure needs to be there. The second pillar we talk about is going to be pillar 3, naturally. And that
of
is
course.
how to not die, as is tradition.
Yep.
Pillar 3, how to not die
Famous pillar 3.
while still applying pressure. So
Lots of pressure.
you need to be able to pressure out the combo decks, the control decks. You also need to be resilient against the aggro decks. You have to survive the aggro onslaught. You have to get into that mid game where you've stabilized, you're not bleeding out, you can start to do your own thing. So you need some sort of control, you need blockers, you need life gain. You need to do something to survive the aggro decks, hopefully while still applying pressure.
Yes, lots and lots of pressure.
The thing that unites these ideas is pillar 1, the most important quintessential pillar, and that is how are you going to pivot between these ideas?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that makes mid-range is being able to pivot between playing the aggro game, being the beatdown, and playing the control game, not dying. So that is, I think, the quintessential soul of mid-range. And pillar 4, obviously, as always, how do you not run out of gas?
The famous pillar 4.
It never changes.
Never changes.
Except sometimes when we give Liam creative control over the pillars, and then it changes a little bit.
So to be clear, we're doing pillar 2, 3, 1, 4.
That's the order.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds like an excellent order. So without further ado, we'll start with pillar 2, how to apply pressure while not dying. We've got a couple of decks we're going to talk about, but I'm going to pass it right back over to Dave so he can begin talking about Mayhem Devil.
Great. Mayhem Devil, I think, is going to be the first one I talk about in a lot of these pillars because it's the first one I wrote about, and some of my thoughts on the pillar in general are embedded in my notes about Mayhem Devil. So
Perfect.
that is how it came to be privileged as the first deck on the list by virtue of lazy writing. Mayhem Devil is a 3-mana 3/3 in Rakdos colors with the triggered ability. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to anything you want, which is kind of gross. One of the ways that Mayhem Devil is going to apply pressure is by triggering all the time. You can send his damage to faces. You probably shouldn't, but you can. And that is a possibility because he's seriously going to trigger constantly. Like, however often you think he's going to trigger, he's probably going to trigger twice as much.
Right.
If he's in play.
Because it's
the
any player all the time.
Any player. Someone cracks an E-Wilds, deal a damage to their face. Like, punish them. That E-Wilds is now an actual fetch.
Is that treasure worth 1 life?
That text there reads, basically, whenever anyone sacrifices anything, you deal 1 damage to anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Constantly. And it happens so much more than you think it's going to happen.
How often do you miss triggers, Alk?
Me personally, never. I watch that field like a hawk.
A hawk.
I am constantly scoping. Like, anytime someone touches a card, I'm like, is it gonna die?
Are you sacrificing it?
Right. I am eagle-eyeing that board constantly. But
simultaneously the element of this pinging things for damage is something that is easy to forget. But it is constant.
Yeah.
So
it's
you love
easy.
playing.
It's like there's no downtime playing Mayhem Devil.
Yeah.
You love playing against Duodrone and Myriad creatures.
Oh my god.
Gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Myriad creatures get exiled, right?
That's true.
They sacrifice?
Yeah, you don't sacrifice.
Yeah, Myriad doesn't trigger Mayhem Devil.
Encore does though.
There you go.
Does trigger Mayhem Devil.
Yeah.
Impulsive Pilferer is 8 triggers by itself.
God.
It is.
That's a lot.
That is
It
a
just
lot.
goes. Impulsive Pilferer goes. Brr. So
Yeah, serious burr.
that is one of the ways you're going to apply pressure is by just shooting people directly in their face with Mayhem Devil. An important thing to talk about in this deck is that this deck, much more than many of the other decks we're going to talk about, is fairly commander agnostic, which is our vaguely idiosyncratic, maybe not grammatically correct way of saying that this deck is perfectly happy to function without its commander for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to apply pressure without its commander even in play by just like really kind of aggressive little beater creatures that are like just valuable enough that they're going to get in damage and lower life totals, but not quite valuable enough to eat removal spells in the face.
Right. Those are the best.
So these are your, belligerent guests is a 3-mana 3/2 with trample that makes a blood token when it connects, and those blood tokens get sacrificed.
Yes, they do.
Blood Crazed Socialite is another vampire. It's a 4-mana 3/3 with menace. It gives you a blood token on ETB, and it lets you sacrifice blood to give it +2/+2 on attack. So this is more sacrifice triggers. And like if you're only playing this as a 4-mana creature that routinely attacks as a 5/5 menace, like that's fine.
Yeah,
like,
that's good.
You don't need it to deal an extra damage with Mayhem Devil for that to be worth it.
Nope.
Right.
But like, it's better when it's dealing an extra damage with Mayhem Devil.
Yeah.
Oh, for
So, like,
sure.
Sure.
So this is how you're gonna keep yourself in the aggro game, just with lots of like little utility creatures that are going to keep the pressure on, and lots of Mayhem Devil triggers that are going to be putting the hurt on life totals.
I like it.
Yeah. I want to pass it over to Ryan so that Ryan can tell us about one of his decks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
For sure. One of the things to keep in mind too that does play just as a cap off on Mayhem Devil that plays a big role, and there are lots of different builds of Mayhem Devil out there, so I won't pontificate solely about mine, but the way that I approach it is with treasures and blood. So if you really want to understand Mayhem Devil in the sort of competitive sense that I've approached mine in, it is on this interaction between treasure and blood.
If you want to understand Ryan's Mayhem Devil list, what you need to do is you need to read the card Beamtown Beatstick.
Yes, and we were just talking about this before the show. I have a very long list of sideboard cards, and sideboard is more to say these are cards that I want in the deck that are hard to find space for, because Mayhem Devil is a deck that, as I talk about in my primer, is basically PDH stonks. You are never ever going to have an easy time making cuts for all the insane, stupid cards that they print that either make tokens, that sacrifice themselves, or artifacts. Basically, they're going to, eventually we're going to get some weird thing like potions. We may even get, I will go forward on a limb here. I think the next novel command zone permanent is going to be equipment, and they're going to be something along the lines of like iconic weapon, or maybe like a signature weapon. And so when we see those, there will be common versions of them that will work with your command zone. And so, Mayhem Devil is a great deck to quote unquote invest in, even though mine is only $38. And that interaction between blood and treasure tokens is that the treasure creates the mana you need to crack blood. So the moment you resolve Mayhem Devil, you can produce as many triggers as you can, as you want to, as many as you have cards to discard with the blood tokens. So, but with that, transitioning over into Rilsa Rail. So Rilsa Rail is a mid-range deck. I would classify it as an aggressive mid-range deck. And that is because the command zone, and if we talk about the creature real quick, it's 3 blue and a black for a 2/5 Death Touch human rogue. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to gain the initiative. And when you attack, you're going to give combat stims to one of your creatures. You're going to give them Death Touch at first. But once you've completed a dungeon, which in this case will be the Undercity, that creature is instead going to get +5/+0, First Strike, Menace, and Death Touch. And so, which is monstrous. Just being able to take any creature in your deck and amplify it to that level either turns it into the double abyss, where they're not able to effectively block your damage without sacrificing enormous amounts of board presence, or they're going to take a ton of damage. And of course, the deck is loaded with cards that make that decision even harder to make because a lot of them are combat damage triggers, like Wan Ti Fangblade, which is going to venture into the dungeon, Jessian Thief, which is going to draw cards when it hits, Ninja the Deep Hours draws cards when it hits, and then of course we also have the Moon Circuit Hacker. Now, what's
those are so good in Rilsa, like crazy good.
They're nuts. And we can, maybe before we sign off on Rilsa, we can talk about kind of how those cards interact with First Strike. But just know that Ninjutsu in First Strike is a weird form of double strike, and it's really busted. It's really strong. It's one of the mechanics that I actually didn't know worked in the deck for a long time. And when I figured out it did, it just massively increased my value of this particular deck in a competitive meta. So what's interesting about Rilsa is that it is an aggressive mid-range deck. What makes it aggressive is that the whole of the 37 creatures, the vast majority of them are under 3 CMC, with a heavy bias towards 1 and 2 CMC creatures. So there's a low curve in the 99, even though the commander is 5 mana.
I'm realizing now that your Rilsa deck is very different from my Rilsa deck.
Yeah.
Yep.
This deck is a Frankenstein, and it got this way because I've built Rilsa 4 different ways now, and the
That's
reason
easy to
for
do. That is surprisingly easy.
Oh
to
yeah,
do.
for sure. I mean, I have 170 cards in my considering, 143 cards in my considering, and none of them are bad.
Right.
So now by playing it a lot, I have discovered, I think, what I feel is a very powerful approach to it. And so you've got this low curve. The second ingredient is that the creatures are evasive. And this is almost across the board. We have Changeling Outcasts, we have Cloudfin Raptor, we have Fairy Seer, Okiba Reckoner Raid, Slitherblade, Triton Shorestalker, Vault Scourge, stuff like that, where you're basically able to apply pressure in small amounts early on. And then as the game progresses into that mid game, then those creatures are now suddenly terrifying. A Cloudfin Raptor easily grows to be 3-4 power on a 1/1 on its own. But if you give Triton Shorestalker +5/+0, it's hitting for 6 and it's unblockable. So the idea is that we scale really well through the game. So what we have is a mid-range commander in an aggressive deck. So I've teetered back and forth. Is this an aggro deck? Is it a mid-range deck? It's an aggressive mid-range deck. Not to get too semantic-y, but I think that the semantics of this do matter because there are different builds of the deck. So cheap creatures, evasive creatures, and then we want creatures that do things on combat damage, or creatures that basically just constantly want to be attacking and generating value. And so in this particular context of how to apply pressure, this deck does it really well. The Death Touch grants us a form of evasion as well. And then the Rilsa is coming down somewhere in the mid game. It's actually, this is another commander ambivalent deck in a way, because one, Rilsa is very difficult to kill. She's 5 toughness and she's black. So Executioner's Capsule, Snuff Out, Doomblade, Spinning Darkness, these spells do not kill Rilsa. They can't even target Rilsa.
And she's legendary, so there's
and she's legendary. Yeah, that's a really good point. Cast Down doesn't hit her either. And she's got Death Touch, so she's actually a very defensive creature on her body, but the trigger makes her very aggressive. So
exactly.
Now, just to give a quick brief synopsis on the initiative. Initiative is an emblem. That emblem is going to operate a lot like Monarch, except it's going to trigger every upkeep if you have it. The other thing that initiative does is that if you gain the initiative, or if you venture into any dungeon while you are in the Undercity, you are going to continually progress through that Undercity every time you do it. So if you have the initiative and you play Vicious Battle Rager, you're going to progress into the next stage of the Undercity. So what that does is it allows Rilsa, it creates a cognitive dissonance on the part of your opponent, where Rilsa being in play allows us more triggers, but killing Rilsa allows us to recast Rilsa.
Right.
And recasting Rilsa means we get further into the initiative. So and she doesn't really attack on her own. So in a lot of ways, it's like people are going to have a hard time justifying killing Rilsa when there's a combo player doing scary things, right? Especially because Rilsa is going to be part of ending that combo player. So this is a really interesting example of a mid-range deck because it actually has very aggressive elements. Another similar, analogous version of this would be Passageway Seer, where there's a heavy focus on my build, has a heavy focus on there's 17 1-drops, 12 2-drops, and like maybe 6 3-drops. But the deck is all about evasion, cheap creatures, getting in early, and then your command zone is giving you that mid-range pressure, as well as the mid-range that comes from the initiative. Having initiative in the command zone is a phenomenal thing to have as a mid-range deck. Yeah, and then some of the ways that we're also applying pressure, we have Cranial Plating in the deck, we have Bone Splitter, and then we have cards like Gary, which are incredible closers. Oftentimes we will find Gary off of the Throne of the Dead 3, which is the ultimate or the sort of end point of the Undercity. And I use the word ultimate because the Undercity is a planeswalker in almost every way, shape, and form. The ability to flip a Gary into play is obviously quite powerful, but then we can reuse things like Gary with the ninjutsu to apply even more pressure. So there's definitely some strong synergistic elements there, and that kind of that is. One other element I do want to mention too that has a lot to do with this is that Proliferate is actually remarkably good in this deck, and Proliferate is going to allow us to increase the number of counters on creatures. The second stage of the Undercity that you may choose is called the Forge. And the Forge allows you to put 2+1/+1 counters on things. When things come in off of Throne of the Dead 3, which is the 5th stage or the ultimate of the Undercity, then it comes in with 3+1/+1 counters. We also have Gluttonous Slug and the Cloudfin Raptor, which also put +1/+1 counters on things. And then, of course, the new disgusting card in the deck, which is Seba Cryptomancer. All of these cards are putting +1/+1 counters on things. Dude, Seba Cryptomancer, I slept on this card until I realized that it was a repeatable form of hexproof that put counters on things in a deck that wants them, while also becoming a 5-power creature when you buff it with Rilsa that has hexproof.
Yeah.
Everything about this card is disgusting in this deck. It's a great card in other decks too, but that kind of wraps up that in terms of Rilsa. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Rilsa is super powerful, and it's a very tricky commander to play against. That's for sure.
Yeah, Rilsa's pressure is extremely combat based with little evasive.
Rilsa is basically wanting to be attacking early and often with evasive creatures. It's going to be mostly through combat damage. Yeah, there used to be cards like Vampire Spawn in here too, where you could ninjutsu those and play them as well. But ultimately, those cards left the deck in an effort to lower the curve. And I will say too, for those of you that are watching or following the deck and the list, you may see more and more 1-drops coming into the deck as time goes on because they're just so good. I don't even have Tormented Soul in here yet. Which is the 1-black, 1/1, can't be blocked, can't block. And then there's also Mistcloak Herald.
Yeah, and there's like Changeling Outcast.
Changeling Outcast is in the deck. And that's because it's actually a rogue and a human.
Yes,
and
it is.
That is important for the 1 Prowl card in the deck, which is Latchkey Fairy. So Latchkey Fairy is a 4-mana 3/1 flying. You can prowl it for 3. It's a fairy rogue. When it enters the battlefield, if its prowl cost was paid, you draw a card. So 3-mana 3/1 flying that draws a card is really good in the deck. And so that's one of the reasons we have that there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
a lot.
Great. That is a lot.
Tell me about Minthara.
All right. I love Minthara. Anybody that knows me knows I love Minthara. It's probably the most scrumptious Orzhov commander we have. But sort of unlike the last two that Alec and Ryan were talking about, this deck sort of doesn't really function if Minthara is not on the table. We have to keep Minthara on the table. Because for those who are unfamiliar, Minthara is a 4-mana 2/2 with Ward X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield, you get an experience counter. And then one more line of text. Creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. That is huge. That is going to come up huge in the late game. So Minthara really, it's a powerfully strong but often slow, just grindy mid-range deck. Like when people think of Orzhov, they think of grindy. This is exactly what Minthara is. It loves to chip away at those life totals as early as possible. Starting from turn 2, like starting from the first turn that one of your creatures can attack, get those life totals down as quick as possible. Not only are they going to get in early damage, they also make great flicker targets. And those, by flickering them, you get those experience counters. If you flicker a Thraben Inspector, not only is the Thraben Inspector leaving the battlefield, but you get another clue to crack later to trigger Minthara, all that kind of stuff. All the worms crossing patrols, the myriad creatures, they hit for great damage. They also trigger Minthara. All these little bitty bodies, they all add together to make one gigantic deck. You're not really going to win with a single Spirited Companion or a single Kami of False Hope, but you're going to win with all of them on the board. These bodies turn into beaters once Minthara sticks, and if she sticks, all you have to do is protect her. And they get, if you got a board of 6 or 8 creatures in the late game, and they get +1, +3, whatever plus power they get, that's how you close out the games. But basically, to apply pressure, you just have to start doming people with your little bitty creatures. And what's nice about that too is you're going to get a few hits in before they either decide to start blocking or before they pay attention to you. So if you're slick enough about it, you may take 9 total damage off the table before they realize that your deck is actually a problem. And then finally, the great part here is creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter that you have. And
damn.
Note that your creatures only get that +1/+0 if Minthara is on the board. You don't lose the experience counters, but you only get that combat buff or that power buff if she is actively on the board during when you want her to be on the board.
And it's noteworthy that Minthara is the only commander, I believe, that we have that has experience counters.
As far as I know, yes, I think that's correct.
Yeah. This is Brad, one of these days we gotta have you over on the connoisseurs, and we'll do a breakdown of how you've built it, because this is a commander that I continually bitch about on Twitter. Saying that I don't know how to build it. It freaks me out. It's too many different ways to build it.
Yeah, there are a ton of different ways you can build it, as straight up Orzhov Aristocrats or Flicker deck or Pestilence deck or what have you, but I just went straight up grindy mid-range, and I love it. So, but yeah, we'll definitely have to get together sometime on that. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Minthara, there's nothing fancy going on. You just want permanents to leave the battlefield. You want that early pressure with your small creatures to build into bigger creatures, and pretty straightforward. What we got next, Dave?
I'm going to tell you about this is, I think, perhaps my favorite mid-range deck. The one that I love Mayhem Devil dearly. I'll be honest, I took it apart.
Sure.
Oh no.
Well,
Sad.
I didn't take it apart. I gave it to Blake, and Blake took it apart, and he rebuilt it completely different than I did.
Yeah.
It's still there. It's on my shelf. Blake keeps all his decks in my house. It's on my shelf. I could play it.
Admittedly, you're generally in more casual pods, right? So
right, exactly. Like
we've talked about this like ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Mayhem Devil is not a deck that plays like casual at all. You can build less competitive versions of it, but you can't build casual versions of it unless you only go face. Maybe you're supposed to only go face if you play casual. That's probably the answer, right?
Well, only face or Sun-Colored Raptors. Not Sun-Colored.
That's
Sun
a great
Hunters.
idea. I mean, that might be good in competitive. I mean, that card is insane, right? What is it? 5 mana, 4/3 or 5/4/3 that has enrage to 5/4.
The 5/4.
Why am I not playing this card?
I think it's a 6 mana 5/4 with enrage. Every time it takes damage, it deals 3 damage to a player.
Yeah.
So it triples your Mayhem Devil damage.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, super fun. But I mean, it's 6 mana, so. But no. This is the Mayhem. The deck I'm going to tell you about right now. This is the quintessential mid-range deck that I still have put together, and it is Vohar, the Voldanian Desecrator. This is a 2-mana blue-black merfolk. I think he's a 1/2. I don't actually remember his stat line. Mostly I remember he has 2 abilities. He has a tap ability that lets you draw a card and discard a card. And if the thing you discard is an instant or sorcery, you get to drain the table for 1.
Seems
and he
good.
has a second ability where for 2 mana, you can sacrifice him at sorcery speed, which is very sad.
Big sad.
But basically gives any spell in your graveyard flashback equal to its mana cost. So if there's a very important spell you need and it's in your graveyard, you just get to use it a second time. And then he goes to your command zone and you can recast him for cheap because he's super cheap and then do it again. So lots of versatility here. the number one way Vohar is going to pressure life totals is just with that looting ability that drains life.
Mhm.
You use that enough times, and if you get 5 triggers off of that, that's a sixth of everyone's life totals, and then you gain that all as life. So it's easy to overlook when people are deciding where to put their removal, but it does add up, which is pretty important.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying too about the Minthara. Like the early drop creatures are pinging in. Like no one wants to waste removal on a Thraben Inspector, but once it hits you 4 times, you're probably annoyed enough to spend a card on it.
Right, like when the Thraben Inspector is a 4/2.
Right, exactly. Now we got problems.
So yeah, my Vohar list is going to continue pressuring life totals with cards like Crushing Disappointment, which makes everyone lose life. Vampire's Kiss is a targeted drain life spell. Stronghold Discipline is my favorite. This is a 4-mana sorcery that says everyone loses life equal to the number of creatures they control.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah,
wow. That is
I
so
love it.
Good right now.
Have you ever cast it and then flashed it back with Vohar to just cast it again?
I have not. I bet that feels good.
Feels really good. This is my win condition in Vohar. It's just Stronghold Discipline. So yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of incremental life draining in throughout the spells in this deck. I'm also gonna pressure life totals with madness creatures. The thing I love about Vohar, he is that discard engine. He's gonna let me run a lot of madness creatures like Kitchen Imp, Hell Mongrel. These guys can get really aggressive. They can swing in. They can damage the life. They can get in there and take some chunks out of some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I use them a lot for blocking, which is how I'm going to apply pressure, like while still not dying. And like Vohar's going to gain me life. That's how I apply pressure without dying. But that's it. That's the plan. We're going to do some life drain. Going to get some madness creatures. Get some chip damage in there.
Right.
I love it.
I like it.
Well, with that, shall I take us into Third Path Iconoclast?
I would love to hear about Third Path.
Do it. Yeah, I definitely want to hear about this. I know this is a deck you've been championing for a while.
Yeah, I have only ever assembled a deck faster when Sailor's Bane came out. Sailor's Bane, of course, being the 9-mana 7/7 Ward 4 with the text, its cost is reduced by 1 colorless for each instant, sorcery, or card with adventure in your graveyard or in exile. Meaning it is a 2-mana 7/7 Ward 4 that you never pay more mana for.
That's not a mid-range deck. Tell us about the mid-range deck.
Yeah, the only reason I mention that is because I built this one only marginally slower. I built Sailor's Bane 3 hours after it was spoiled in Japanese. I went and I bought the cards and I assembled it and I was playing it. TPI, or Iconoclast, Third Path Iconoclast, I'll just refer to it as TPI from here on out, is a blue and a red for a human monk 2/1. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So for those of you who've been following some of my work, you know that I'm a hashtag bird gang enthusiast, which means Murmuring Mystic. Murmuring Mystic is a 1/5 for 3 and a blue human wizard, I want to say, that creates 1/1 blue bird tokens, illusion bird tokens, every time you cast an instant or a sorcery. Third Path Iconoclast is half the cost. It's red, and it triggers off of non-creature spells making artifacts. Okay, so there's a lot to love there.
A lot of going on, yep.
And I'll be honest, I used to joke that, wow, wouldn't it be insane if they gave Murmuring Mystic a second color someday? And they did so much more than that. So, as I just described. So, TPI, the way I have it built, this is a phenomenal spike deck. If you're looking for a deck to take to a tournament, you're going to have answers to everything. You're going to make tons of bodies. You're generally going to be the second, third, or fourth scariest player at the table. There's going to be a balance of card selection spells that are really cheap, and then these big bangers like Distant Melody, Keep Watch, and that are going to refill your hand, or they're just going to give you 15 cards.
Right.
Like insane card advantage. The deck also has an Ophidian Eye, Tandem Lookout, Curiosity combo. So for those of you unfamiliar with Curiosity, it's any effect that triggers off of damage done to an opponent. And it has to be just damage. You put Tandem Lookout, you do Soul Bond with any of the pingers, and we run more pingers in this deck than any other deck in CPDH or in Pauper Commander in general. Because we also make artifacts, we also make creatures, and we also cast lots of non-creature spells. So all of those things work together. The other one is Ophidian Eye. This is an aura. And so the way that we apply pressure in this deck is actually kind of nuanced. It's going to be very pod dependent. And playing this deck well is going to require that you know how to leverage those bodies when it's important. Early game, these bodies are going to be mainly blockers, and maybe even through the mid game, because we only have 2 spells in the deck that make those creatures bigger. We play Volatile Claws, which is 2 and a red instant until end of turn. Creatures you control get +2/+0 in all creature types, which also doubles as a protection spell against Fiery Cannonade and Breath Weapon, as well as Eyeblight Ending Eyeblight Massacre, also Eyeblight Ending. But then other weird stuff like Victim of Night for targeted removal. But this is an Anthem that we can kill the table with. The other one is Pack Tactics, which is 2 and a red, instant speed. Attacking creatures are going to get +X/+0, where X is the number of players being attacked, and you're going to draw a card. So generally speaking, we only want to use these when we have sufficient attackers and maybe some protection, where we can counter some interaction and then like kill 1 to 2 players and make it into a 1v1 or end the game with one of these spells. So if there's a lot of pressure on the board, we're going to be keeping up blockers. That's for stuff like if a gut player gets into their head that we need to die, then we're going to be holding up blockers. In terms of applying pressure, we're actually applying pressure by proxy of the fact that we can swing in with like 10 creatures and maybe 2 of them get blocked, and we're going to get 8 damage in. So we're swarming.
With completely indispensable creatures.
Yeah, they're really like early mid game. That's right. Like early mid game, they're useful because we need to have a certain number of them to do the things we want to do. Right. We want to have Metalcraft on. We want to be able to cast things like Meeting of Minds. We want to be able to cast like cards like Shared Discovery.
Yep.
Yeah, they're expendable. Exactly. And we're able to apply pressure with them on combo players pretty readily because they generally don't have a lot of blockers, or their blockers are very small and they don't want to trade 1/1 untapper, like in Gretchen, for a 1/1 token that I made because I cast a Ponder. So generally speaking, we're going to be acting a little bit like an aggro deck in maybe turn 4, turn 5, where we're like attacking combo players with this. If there's an aggro player that's pressuring us, then we might need to hold them up. Ending the game is going to come in the form of those anthems. However, the other form of pressure that we have is the aforementioned pingers. So we have Firebrand Archer, Kessig Flame Breather, Reckless Fireweaver, Thermo Alchemist, Ingenious Artillerist, and Witty Roastmaster, as well as Impact Tremors, as ways to soften our opponents up with the triggers that we get just by casting our spells. And all of those creatures, in one way, shape, or form, read, I cast a spell, I ping everybody for 1. So a lot of times, like the best opening hands are going to be like TPI, Mana Rocks, lands, and then like one of these pingers.
Yep.
And they're going to soften people up to the point where, swinging in for 8, with a bunch of 1/1s is going to be really problematic for somebody's life total. And then the final way that we can apply pressure and actually end the game is with Massive Raid. Massive Raid is 1 red and a red instant. It deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of creatures we control. Do note that in this deck, Massive Raid is also a counterspell because a person's spell goes off the stack when they die. So if they have a combo spell that they're trying to combo off with, or if they're trying to sweep your board, you can use Massive Raid to kill them instead. And it's basically murder that also reads murder a player. And those are the spells that we use there. The final one I'll mention is Makeshift Munitions. If we ever untap and we have Makeshift Munitions in play, maybe we have 10 tokens and a bunch of rocks, we can sink all of our mana into sacking our board and just yeeting it at somebody's face. So
that's good times.
So we have Swarm, we have Pingers, we have Boom Headshots, and we have Anthems. And that's how we apply pressure without dying. Yeah, that's how we apply pressure.
Nice. And it does it very well and very fast.
Yeah, and there's I will mention one. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I've heard TPI's gained quite a reputation in the last 6 months.
Yeah, Murmuring Mystic is one of my highest win rate decks of all time. And this is in many ways better. There are nuances to that. Flyers are a problem for TPI, so the fact that Murmuring Mystic makes them is huge. Murmuring Mystic also doesn't die as easily. TPI dies to everything, including if if it's a sweeper, then your engine and your things die. It also doesn't get Airborne Aid, which is like your third copy of Distant Melody. Airborne Aid says 3 and a blue, draw cards equal to number of birds in play, which is just a really silly card, but it's Distant Melody. So, and the other thing is that, Murmuring Mystic is a 1/5. So there's all the like flying synergies that come with that, like Winged Words and Lofty Denial and Abjure, which is a 1-mana counterspell. You have to sack a blue permanent for it. So you do lose things. It's not a straight across upgrade, but it's the deck that I really enjoy playing right now. The cost of the commander is a big part of that, and the ability to end the games really rapidly when you want to do that is that. And then the last thing I want to mention about it is just that generally speaking, it's actually not very fast. We're biding our time and just trying to take advantage of all this insane card advantage, like Treasure Cruise, Thoughtcast, Shared Discovery, Of One Mind, Meeting of Minds, Perilous Research, Keep Watch, Secrets of the Golden City, and Distant Melody is like the most disgusting package of busted draw spells I can possibly imagine. So we definitely want to have time to let that stuff sort of build up. So
Yeah, you gotta let that marinate a little bit.
Yeah, but that's it. That's TPI.
Solid. And that is a very, very strong deck. And you wouldn't... I think a lot of people missed that TPI is actually like a mid-range deck at heart. When it came out, everyone's like, is it spells? Blitz, pingers, this and that. But it turned out to be a very, very strong mid-range deck. Commander.
Yeah, and without waxing poetic anymore about it, there are lots of other builds of the deck that are also very good. So I encourage you all to experiment with that. Aggro builds with lots of anthems are also probably a good way to do it. So yeah, check that out.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and move on to Pillar 3. How to not die while applying pressure. Pillar 3, as Dave mentioned earlier in the episode, is kind of how your mid-range deck is, I believe, acting as a control deck.
Yeah, this is the way that your mid-range deck is gonna pretend to do control-y things so that it doesn't die to aggro. It lives long enough to do the mid-range thing.
Yeah, and for that, I'm just going to pass it right off to Dave to talk about Mayhem Devil and how it acts as a control deck.
Yeah. For a lot of the decks that we mentioned here, how to not die is just going to be, a robust control suite of probably, in most of these cases, the most efficient and high-powered control spells that are available in the format. Cast Down, Go for the Throat, Lightning Bolt, lots of things like that. And Mayhem Devil certainly runs these cards. It's in Rakdos colors, so you can expect a really good control suite. But I want this pillar to focus on the very specific way, the ways that are like unique to Mayhem Devil and the other decks that we have here that are going to accomplish this while still applying that pressure to do the mid-rangey thing. So I think that my favorite example of this card in the Mayhem Devil deck is probably Deadly Derision, which it's a 4-mana instant, destroy target creature, then make a treasure token. So in terms of total mana expenditure, it's a murder. It costs 1 more, but it gives you that 1 more back in the form of a treasure token. But that treasure token is also an extra damage off the Mayhem Devil, so that's like still we're getting back into the pressure that you can apply with this devil. I also want to talk about things like a Bloody Betrayal is a
that is my favorite wrinkle ever.
This is a 3
that card is
3 mana threaten effect. I'm old enough to think of it as threaten effects instead of active treason effects.
Yeah, we can call it that.
It's a 3-mana threaten effect. You temporarily gain someone's creature and it gains haste and you untap it, with the added bonus of creating a blood token. And if you Bloody Betrayal into an innocent blood, or a Fleshbag Marauder, or a Chain Devil, or a Kraken, what's the Kraken? Rot-Tide Gargantua? Like, we have like 5 of these innocent blood effects now, and it's gross because like sacrificing someone else's creature is crazy control value, and then everyone else sacrifices another creature as well, and you get 4 Mayhem Devil triggers. Like, this is how you keep the pressure on. Like, There's no
Absolutely
creatures left
disgusting.
to target with
Yeah.
Mayhem Devil after that, and so you just send all 4 of that damage to someone's face. That's how you apply. It's a lava axe. It's a lava axe that kills
Just take
4
that.
of your
Yeah,
opponent's
yeah, it's a
creatures
lava axe.
for 4 mana, and you get the blood token out of the betrayal. It's oh my god. Anyway,
Well, and you're getting like Vraska's Fall, right? Like the same thing, instant speed for 3
Yeah.
mana.
oh, we have 6 of them now.
Yeah.
I forgot Vraska's Fall. Vraska's Fall doesn't let you
Yeah.
sacrifice something, so I feel like it's worse.
That's true.
Yeah,
don't
you
a
only
whole
get 3
table
triggers
full.
off that. You need the 4th
Right.
one so you can sacrifice whatever you stole with
Yeah.
Bloody Betrayal.
It's not true trigger tribal if you don't get the whole table evolved.
Now, of course, that being said, 3 mana, everybody loses 1 creature, and we deal 1 damage 3 times. Is at instant
sure.
speed is very, very
Solid
strong. The secondary benefit of these edicts being that if they have a wide board, all those triggers are going to help you clear it up in a way that those edicts will be more effective. So that's
Yeah.
really strong.
So yeah, that's I mean, in addition to the standard issue control suite, these are the special ways that Mayhem Devil is going to accomplish not dying while still applying pressure.
And it does it very well.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we've got Rilsa.
Yeah.
Back to Rilsa. Bay Rilsa.
Hey, Rilsa. That's right.
Yeah. So Rilsa is another, it's a Dimir deck. It's positioned well to deploy a lot of efficient removal and a wide, coverage of things with, your non-permanent type bounce effects, as well as the incredible kill spells that Black offers us. The way that we don't die here, cards like Snuff Out, Defile, Aether Spellbomb, Echoing Decay, and Echoing Truth. If you aren't playing these cards right now, you may have forgotten that Gut is a thing, Abdel is a thing, TPI is a thing.
Yep.
Some of like the decks that are seeing a lot of play right now that are very good are very vulnerable to these spells. They're cheap, they're instant speed. Even Echoing Decay is 2 mana and it's -2/-2. It still kills a Gut and it wipes out every Gut token in play if there's no Inspiring Leader.
Yeah.
So great spells. We have Go for the Throat, Grasp of Darkness. Grasp of Darkness and Victim of Night are phenomenal kill spells. They don't always come up in searches when you're looking for destroy effects, but they generally read Terminate, and that's good.
Yeah.
We also play Resculpt because Rilsa is a 2/5 Death Touch. Resculpt generally reads Exile target creature. They make a 4/4 and it attacks the rest of the table for the rest of the game.
Yep.
So pretty sick in that regard. We have our Oubliette, which of course, is a controversial card, but it is in the deck. It's a good card. And then we have Precipitous Drop as another one. So yeah, I mean, if we were to generically describe it, we have 14 removal spells that are targeted, and 2 of them are repeatable. So the one that's repeatable that I haven't mentioned so far is actually Viridian Longbow. Viridian Longbow is really gross when you can tutor it up, and it's really gross when your commander is death touching.
Yep.
So Viridian Longbow is in the deck for that purpose, allows us to repeatedly ping things with death touch. The beauty of it is that if Rilsa dies on the stack, the damage still has death touch, so it's still going to kill that creature. The other card I wanted to mention too is Faceless Butcher. This is a card that sees almost no play in CPDH, and with the advent of Alabaster Host Intercessor, the 6 mana 3/4 plane cycling white card that has that's basically a Banisher Priest. So it's going to enter the battlefield and exile a creature until it leaves the battlefield.
Yeah.
Faceless Butcher is the same thing in black. It's 4 mana though for a 2/3, enters the battlefield, exiles a creature. Separate trigger, keep that in mind. When it leaves play, return that card back into play. This card with Ninjutsu is a repeatable way of targeting people's command zone and completely hosing their commanders.
Yeah.
Only psychopaths allow their commander to stay under a card like this because, and I think it generally, probably like 80+% of the time, it is correct to put your commander back to the command zone. Because if you don't, you're going to be waiting on a kill spell that may never arrive again to get your commander back.
What's really wild about these cards is that they used to function completely differently. Like years ago, when moving to the command zone was a replacement effect, then that means that something like Alabaster Host Intercessor sent the card directly to the command zone, which means that if you killed the Intercessor, your commander would come back into play from the command zone because that's where the Intercessor left it. Now
wild.
things changed a couple of years ago with, it's not a replacement effect anymore. Now it's when it gets exiled or put in the graveyard or changes zones in some way, as a state-based action, you can choose to move it from that new zone into the command zone, which means that the intercessor is going to put it into exile, and then you are moving it from exile into the command zone. The intercessor is not putting it into the command zone. So if you kill the intercessor, it doesn't come back for free, which is a massive shift in favor of the intercessor and the butcher and all these things.
Yeah, and this is huge, and this is kind of a sneak peek in a sense into, I think, some like really hot tech, is that when you can attach a body to a creature that targets the most important thing in the game, which is people's commander, and you have a way to reuse it either through flickering. Faceless Butcher feasibly could be used in conjunction with some pretty disgusting stuff like Ghostly Flicker, Displace, any of the blink effects. And the way that works is you exile a creature, and then with the second trigger, with that trigger on the stack, you flicker it, and it's going to take that creature away forever, and that allows you to actually hit other things that might not be commanders. If you're targeting other things that aren't commanders with Faceless Butcher, it's a little less valuable because they can just kill it to get their creature back. But with the command zone, it's a lot better because it's reading 4 mana, make a 2/3, exile, basically unconditionally target commander. And so these, you can also use Grave Flicker effects like Undying Evil with them. But in this deck, we have Faceless Butcher because we can flip it off of Throne of the Dead 3 as a 5/6 hexproof black monster that eats your commander. And then later on, we can ninjutsu it to do it again and again and again and again. So if you're playing black, you probably ought to be playing Faceless Butcher in it just as much as you should be playing Oubliette. This is a really, really good spell, and definitely something I encourage people to play. To wrap this particular section up on Rilsa, the other things we have are Crypt Rats and Pestilence as sweepers. Pestilence and Crypt Rats save your butt. They reset the board, and they also end games. They are quite simply some of the best spells in the format in black, and they're very dynamic. Pestilence in particular is so gross when you have a 5 toughness creature in the command zone, because you are sweeping the board, and then you get to keep Pestilence in play. It's a 2 and a double black enchantment. At the end of turn, if no creatures are in play, sacrifice it. You can pay a black to deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. So this is a way to end the game when people are low life totals as well. The other 2 sweepers are Echoing Decay and Echoing Truth, which both have very real uses as sweepers. The deck no longer plays any edicts.
I like Arms of Hadar more than I like Echoing Decay.
Yeah, Arms of Hadar is another one that I'm very bullish on. Arms of Hadar is 3 and a black.
The thing about it is that there's no way for Gut to dodge it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, if you are in a meta where there are TPIs and Guts running around, you should be playing Arms of Hadar if you're in black. It reads target players, creatures all get -2/-2. And just as you mentioned, it's going to kill the Gut almost every time because Gut doesn't have really any ways that they're currently playing to increase its power or its toughness. And so it kills the Gut. And then, of course, the background is no longer working. That gives them the +2/+2 on the tokens. So the tokens all die due to state-based effects. Arms of Hadar is absolutely insane. Definitely a card you should play. If you like that effect and you want more and you're playing black control or midrange, you can also play Eyeblight Massacre to do the same kind of thing to everybody. So I like both of those. Echoing Decay is just here because I want the instant speed of it. This deck doesn't tend to have problems with like creatures that are bigger because I can block it with Rilsa. Like people don't send Dargos at me because I just kill it with Rilsa and then I get the initiative again. So I don't care that it
tramples
doesn't
over
kill
Rilsa for such an insignificant amount of damage. It's
for
so
2. It's
depressing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Like
it is. It's
the thing that always
5 bud
worries me about
enormous.
Echoing Decay is that you can blanket with a protection spell. Like no protection will stop Arms of Hadar. Like there's exactly one way to stop Arms of Hadar, and it's Dawn Charm. Or like a counter spell.
Yeah, or it could be, or maybe an Anthem that would buff up your toughness.
Okay, sure.
There are ways to stop it that are good, but you're totally right. Like Echoing Decay and Echoing Truth are not catch-alls because even more on top of what you just said, you can also kill the target. So like if you go Echoing Truth on your TPI token, you can just go Outnumber or Lightning Bolt or Galvanic Blast, or if you have makeshift munitions, you just sack the creature. Right, so if it loses the target, it no longer is targeting a creature that like hasn't. There's no name, right? There's no creature.
The whole thing is countered.
These are not catch-alls, but Right, but they are
It has a lot
really
of
good, and I
utility,
think
yeah.
my main concern is just that right now combo is very ascendant, and people seem to have forgotten that the combo players need to be pressured, just like in CDH. Like they need to have their life totals reduced because otherwise, with with enough time, they are going to deterministically win the game. So Echoing Decay hits all of the untappers in Gretchen. It hits Gut. It hits all the tokens. It's like hitting Abdel tokens. It's hitting most of the things I care about. And so that's kind of why it plays over Arms of Adar. But I could totally, like, if somebody played Arms of Adar and Rilsa, like, power to them. That's a great card, and I definitely recommend it. So that wraps up Rilsa.
Awesome.
All
Great
right.
breakdown.
Brad, you want to tell us about Minthara?
I do. Of course I do. I want to talk about Minthara all the time. But basically, a Minthara deck stays alive while applying pressure literally the only way Orzhov knows how, and that is cheap, efficient removal, cheap, evasive creatures, and just a splash of lifelink or life gain.
Are you playing Unmake? Please tell me you're playing Unmake.
I'm waffling on that. I've had it
Yeah.
in, and I've had it out, and I've had it in, and I've had it out. It is so good, though.
Probably Angelic Purge, though, right?
I believe so.
It's a 2 and a white. As a
Yeah.
cost, sack a permanent, exile creature, artifact,
do
enchantment,
not.
sorcery
Nope.
speed.
I need to put that on the considering list.
Another way to trigger Minthara.
Yeah. My considering list is growing.
Long, I bet.
Yeah, it's getting there. Yeah, even not for nothing, like something like depending on your meta, Soltari Visionary, the 2 mana it's a 2 mana or 3 mana 2/2 with Shadow. When it damages a player, target, you destroy target enchantment that player controls. And when that becomes an 8/2 or a 9/2 or a 10/2 with Shadow, like that's a serious problem for the table, stapled to some removal. So that's nice. It's got an unblockable body with built-in removal, and you just can't really pass that up, especially when you're buffing up your power every single turn. You get 5 or 6 experience counters on it, and it's taken down the whole table by itself. Like I've seen, not with my Minthara deck, but I've seen that Visionary kill a player by itself because they could not do anything about it.
Wow.
Like it could get absolutely out of hand.
Now, you mentioned the Visionary. That one destroys enchantments. That is
Correct.
an unbelievable card in this meta right now.
Oh, so good.
Like it's just a 3 mana 2/2
That
unblockable
destroys
that
backgrounds.
destroys
And Landoras, yeah.
like backgrounds.
Yeah,
Dude, like if
Landora's
you're in white
background.
right now,
Oubliettes, yeah.
like one of the things that's crazy about white is that it has such an immense array of cheap evasive creatures that you can build a whole deck with a commander completely unrelated to it around these type creatures, and that card absolutely hoses. You imagine a Gretchen player just absolutely groaning in pain, like when they're like every turn they lose their Gift of Paradise, they lose their Wild Growth. It's like, what do? Right? Like they even a Freed from the Real if it doesn't like combo on that turn.
Right, sure.
Super sick.
Yeah, and then basically to protect myself, I'm using Kamiya False Hope because it's a crazy good Spore Frog in white that keeps you out of combat damage. Prismatic Strands is amazing. I put it in every single white deck. It's great here too. You can blank those more problematic combat phases with it. And then in my list, I don't go super heavy on the life gain. I've got Healer's Hawk and Mukotai Ambusher because suddenly just hitting someone for 8 lifelink out of nowhere
Nasty.
is really, it's really nasty, really good. And then you guys were talking about sweepers. I really only run Crypt Rats in my list, and that's more of a fail-safe or like a backup in case I absolutely need it. And I chose Crypt Rats over Pestilence because when they die, that triggers Minthara. I've tried running Pestilence in this deck, and it is absolutely brutal. Like, if you got 45 power worth of creatures on the board, they still only have 1 or 2 butts. Like, this deck is very fragile to very good sweepers like that. So you got to kind of be careful with stuff like that. But Crypt Rats is awesome. It'll trigger Minthara. But overall, that's really it. You're just doing Orzhov stuff. You're taking out problematic creatures with your snuff outs and your cast downs and your go for the throats and that sort of thing. And then you're just getting a little bit of life gain. Probably not every combat, but because of the nature of Minthara, you're probably getting large chunks of life back at a time. So if it's turn 14 and everyone's down into single digits, and then they look up and all of a sudden you're back at 15 or 16, that's going to be a problem for everybody else. Yeah, that's absolutely huge.
And that actually, something that I didn't get to mention before is that life gain is actually a really big part of mid-range, in my opinion. So Minthara having
I've always
access
thought
to
so
white,
as well.
yeah, I think that being able to play the long game does require that you, in not all cases, like TPI doesn't have life gain in it.
Sure.
Although you can play Sylvok Lifestaff, which is a great card if you're in very aggressive metas. But life gain allows you to play that longer game when people start beating on your doorstep. That's actually an element of Rilsa that I didn't even mention, but that there's a lot of like lifelink effects in there, so that you can hit for like 6, 7, 8 and gain that life.
Yeah, black has a lot of lifelink options, whether they're spells or creatures. I mean, you hit a lifelink creature off the throne, and you're going to town.
Yeah, it's insane. You put like Mokutai Ambusher in play as like a 6/5 lifelinker, and you buff it up to 11. You're gaining 11 every turn. It's a lot. So.
Yeah. Yep. And two, it can't be understated. I could put Nested Shambler in every single pillar because, if that's an 8/1 and it dies, it makes 8/8/1 squirrels. Like, you cannot. Nested Shambler is the all-star of the Minthara deck. I don't care what anybody says.
It's a great
it's
card
so
in
powerful.
general.
Yeah, so powerful.
Yeah.
But
60 card, you can put Demonic Appetite on it and make it a 4/4.
Yeah.
And hit somebody and then sack it to make 4 1/1s. That's like one of my favorite interactions in 60 card right now.
Yeah, it's so good. So good. But that's all I got for old Minthy. What do you got for Vohar, Dave? How are they going to not die while applying the pressure?
Like Mayhem Devil, Vohar's control seat is pretty basic. I'm running all the, go for the throat, cast down, all the, Victim of Night, just what all the 2-mana cheap, reliable ones are.
Yeah.
The thing that Vohar does better than anyone else is Dark Withering, Just the Wind, and Murderous Compulsion, which are madness removal spells, which are going to let me discard them to Vohar, cast them for cheap. Like Dark Withering costs 8 to cast and 1 to madness.
So much.
No one has ever hard cast that one.
So good.
Oh, are you sure about that?
Pretty sure. It's got to feel real bad. No one has ever hard cast that and then been glad that happened.
There we go.
Yeah. There you go.
We got there. So I'm going to discard those to Vohar's ability to do the life drain thing and gain a life. We were just talking about how life gain was an important part of the not dying plan. Vohar's got life gain built into the ability. And then I'm going to cast them for madness to do the removal thing for really cheap. I do run a couple of the sweepers that have already been mentioned. Arms of Hadar, I think, is brutally powerful.
So good.
I'm on Crypt Rats.
Good.
I think I'm on Pestilence as well in that deck. I'm not sure if I decided that 2 or 3 was the correct number.
Vohar is
1, 2. Not enormous.
Okay. You could always like sack Vohar to get a spell and then pop your Pestilence so that you're not like losing out on your commander so much. Like you're still getting to do your commander's thing.
It's possible. I don't remember whether it's in the deck or not, but I mean it probably should be in the current meta. Yeah, we're gonna do standard control-y things, and then we're gonna mid-range flavorize that control by doing madness things with life drain.
Yeah, checks out. Pretty
That
sick.
Sounds like a pretty solid game plan.
I think I went with Crypt Rats instead of Pestilence because of Call to the Netherworld.
Oh yeah, because you can get it back over and over again. I think that's pretty good. I think Pestilence still sort of is one of those cards where, like, admittedly, I actually didn't have it in TPI for a little bit because when I lowered the curve, I was very concerned about like having this card in my hand in the opener or losing a lot of stuff. But then I realized that the Forge is always putting our stuff out of Pestilence range.
Oh, Rilsa.
And so, sorry, my bad, Rilsa. Yeah, in Rilsa. And so I frequently find it very hard to not include Pestilence in my decks because it's just so dynamic. But slots are tight in good decks. Am I right?
It's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I was just looking at my Minthara list when we were talking about life gain. I did actually have, just to get that incremental life gain, I included Omen of the Sun with Scroll Shift.
Oh yeah, that's sick.
It triggers Minthara, gets you a little bit of life. I mean,
I love that.
Can't go wrong. You get more creatures that'll die to trigger Minthara. You get free 1/1s, which turn into 8/1s or 6/1s or 7/1s or whatever you got. Like, come on.
I just dragged up my actual list, and Pestilence is in here. Crypt Rats is in here. Arms of Hadar is not. I
yeah.
don't know what happened there.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
That's a big mistake on my part. I'll fix that.
Yeah. Arms of Hadar, play that card.
What-
Faceless Butcher, play that card.
What is in here is Evankar's Justice.
Oh God, I love this card.
Did you-
Talk
Okay.
dirty
Did
to
you
me.
know so Evankar's Justice is a 4-mana black sorcery, deals 2 damage to each creature in each player, and it has buyback of 3. So here's a fun
Yes.
fact about Vohar's flashback ability. It says
Oh.
if that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Standard issue flashback text. So you can't flashback the same thing over and over
Jesus.
again. But if you pay the buyback cost on Evankar's Justice, even if you are flashing it back from your graveyard with Vohar's ability, it would not be put into your graveyard. It would be put into your hand.
No, it would not.
So it just does get
That's
put into your
so
hand. You
sick.
can just recycle
That's
Evankar's over and
gross.
over. Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And we should mention that like Evankar's Justice is insane for the same reason in many ways that like Arms of Hadar and Eye Blight Massacre are, right? If you're worried about gut players, and truly like gut is a very good deck, so definitely prepare for it. Evankar's Justice, I've had games where I was like casting this every single turn, and the gut player, or I just had it in hand, and the gut player literally couldn't do anything about it. It's like kind of sad.
Yeah.
And this is actually, it really illustrates well the fact that in this format, it's very self-regulating, right? Like a deck gets good, and then suddenly people are like, I have now 6 ways to completely end your career. So like Gut gets good, and suddenly like Gut, TPI, Abdel, these decks are good, but look, it's just a flavor of the week, right? Like these are good decks, and you should still play them, but just know that there's always going to be answers to things. Like at common, the answers are almost always better than the threats.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so it's really cool that we have such a huge suite of ways to deal with that. And look, Arms of Hadar was just printed, right? Like this card is like it's like an indicator of what we can expect WotC to print more of in the future, because they're saying, yeah, this is okay at
100%.
common,
Yep.
right? Like, and that's huge. Just like blood tokens or treasure tokens or all this other stuff. So
Beautiful. Tell me about TPI.
back to TPI.
Back to TPI.
Oh, I'd love to. So, how to not die while applying pressure. TPI does this very well, with the exception of flyers, which is not a small thing. Flyers are a big part of the format right now because they just apply pressure really well. They're great with the initiative and the monarch. Several you do actually have your sort of Eric Crocker and Sneak, which is a flyer in of itself with the initiative. So TPI does an amazing job of gumming up the ground. If you are experiencing a lot of gut players in your format, a gut player like running up against a TPI is like kind of a bad draft. Like some people, not everybody like understands this concept, so we'll just outline it briefly. But sometimes you show up at a table where your deck is just bad against what's happening, and there's not really much to do about it, because a gut player who tries to kill the third path iconoclast player is denying themselves the interaction they need to not die to the combo player. But they also are going to have a tough time winning in the late game when the TPI player is creating like 4 tokens a turn, and they can just double block on your menace tokens. So that all kind of suggests that TPI does a great job of not dying by just blocking. We make bodies, we block, and we stay alive. We don't have
just
life gain.
Throw
in the
them
deck.
out there. Throw them under the
just
bus.
Put them out. Yeah, put them under the bus, and that's a really great way of not dying. Any deck that can make a lot of bodies, any deck that plays a lot of creatures that has, or has a lot of creatures in the deck is going to do well, I think, in the format, because you're going to have a lot to use. The combat step is very important. So that's how we don't die. We don't have fogs. We have removal. We have bodies. So yeah, that's it. Pretty simple.
Sure. Right. Very simple, very effective.
Yeah, it do the thing. Go Burr.
What we got next here?
All right. Moving on to Pillow 1, how to pivot between not dying and applying pressure.
Wait, we're back to 1?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah. Back to
we're
Pillow
an
1.
hour,
That's
an
how we
hour and
do.
18 minutes into this recording, and we have finally gotten to Pillar 1. Here it
to
is.
Pillar 1.
We made it.
We got there.
Oh,
So
actually, can I
all
mention one thing before we
Yeah.
go on? There is one other way that you can make people not attack you
Mhm.
and not die. And it's worth mentioning because these cards are so underplayed. And that is anything that says goad.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I am a
So-
big fan of Goad lately. Hmm.
Red does not have fogs. Red has Goad, and arguably it's kind of better. Goad is really gross right now. There's a lot of Dargos out there. There's a lot of like creatures that get bigger over time because of the Throne of the Dead 3 and because of the initiative, and there's like a lot of that stuff. There's even Voltron decks out there.
Right.
And so some of the cards you can use in red would be Coronation of Chaos. So if you've never heard of this card, it was also another one of these like Baldur's Gate. Am I right? Like this
Oh my God,
this set
champion
was
set.
so
Mhm.
stupid. Like such a huge thing for the format. Coronation of Chaos came out of that. It's sorcery, 2 and a red. Up to 3 target creatures can't block and goad them. Like, wow.
So strong.
I consistently want to find room for Coronation of Chaos in TPI, and I just can't seem to because the deck is just chock full of like some of the best spells ever printed for this kind of a thing.
Right.
But it's not the only one that does that. Psychic Impetus and the whole Impetus cycle, Parasitic Impetus, Martial Impetus, Shiny Impetus, and green was the
Predatory.
It's the 5 mana one. Predatory, yeah. These cards buff up a creature and they make it goaded for the rest of the game, and then they give you some recursive value, except for Predatory. Predatory makes it so it kills a creature every turn, which is pretty cool. But Psychic Scries, Martial buffs the whole team of the goaded creature, and then Shiny gives you treasures. This is another way that you can not die, and it's a really, really cool way to do it because you're actually, if your deck cares about killing people maybe more quickly than not, like Mayhem Devil would be a good example. What would be some other ones? TPI maybe a little less so. Maybe it's more about the fog in that case. Rilsa really likes these two. Yeah, that creature is going to attack somebody else for the rest of the game and generate value for you while pressuring their life total. And if your opponents don't like it, they can kill the creature and give you a 2-for-1. So, yeah, definitely consider playing those cards. Anyways, just wanted to mention that because those are spicy tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Moving into Pillow 1, pivoting between the aggro and control options of these decks that we are talking about. Dave, how does Mayhem Devil do its pivoting?
Yeah, so before I talk about Mayhem Devil, I want to talk about the pivoting itself just a little bit. Because I feel
Yeah,
like
by all means.
what we've done, and the reason I put all these pillars out of order is because I think that this one is the most important. The pivot is the most important, but I wanted to really establish what are we doing with the control elements, what are we doing with the aggro elements before we talk about the switch between them.
Right.
And a lot of what we've talked about before has been like cards that kind of do both things. So we've been talking about cards that keep you from dying while still applying some pressure, and cards that can apply some pressure while they keep you from dying. And like when you find a card like that, or a card or cards that can like fill both of those roles, like that's ideal. That is the mid-range card. That's
Modality.
yes, the modality, or even like the modality is like choosing one or the other. Like if you can get a card that does both at once, like that's the sweet spot.
That's the juicer.
That's the juicer. But more than that, like you have to playing mid-range well means getting really good at reading the board, reading board states, reading the flow of the aggression and the control around the table, and knowing when you should be pressuring, who you should be pressuring, when you should be controlling, who you should be controlling. There's an article that got run in Star City Games years and years and years ago called I don't even remember. I think it's called "Who's the Beatdown," and his whole article is just
Who's the
about
Beatdown?
recognizing
Classic article.
when you're the beatdown and when you're the control. And things get more complicated in a multiplayer game, but the purpose of this is still very much alive. So go Google that article, read "Who's the Beatdown." That will make you a better mid-range player.
Yes.
So that's how to play mid-range, how to make in-game decisions. What I'm here to talk to you today is about designing good mid-range decks, making decisions in the deck design phase of Magic, so that you
Turn
have
Yeah.
way before turn 0. Making sure that you have these modal cards available and you have these the pivoting strategy is a thing that you're allowed to do. For Mayhem Devil specifically, if Mayhem Devil is online, he's going to give you a ton of pings that you get to send wherever you want, and you're going to have to decide Do you send them to face or to creatures? Do you want to pressure life totals or do you want to do board control? Which creatures? How many creatures? Are you going to kill tokens with these because you can kill a bunch of them? Or are you going to stack all the triggers onto a 4-butt so you can kill that one 4-butt and leave the tokens alone? You need to decide how much Death Touch are you going to put into the Mayhem Devil deck. Death Touch on an instant can be completely game warping.
Yeah.
Death Touch on an
Yeah.
enchantment will warp the game briefly, and then you'll get beaten to death and thrown in the dumpster behind S because no one
Behind the
likes that.
Arby's. Yep.
So you have to. These are decisions that you have to pay really close attention to. I don't have a lot of specific cards to tell you about. I mean, I guess Blade Brand. You should have Blade Brand in your Mayhem Devil deck because that's not.
Yeah.
But
and actually, I would challenge that there's two other ones that we talked about. Modality. There's Battle Rage Blessing and Offer Immortality.
Yeah, the Death Touch and Indestructible Instance.
Exactly. Yeah. And these do double duty. Whereas, or was it Touch of Moonglove? If you want to be even more aggressive, is like dude, Touch of Moonglove is one of the nastiest things I've ever done in a Mayhem Devil deck. I remember I cast it. I think I had 9 tokens in play. It was like I cast Mayhem Devil. Everybody looked around and someone was like, Counterspell, and I was like, Pyroblast. And they just were like, you could see them like kind of shrink in, and then I proceeded to mow the table down and won the game on the spot.
Yeah,
with Touch of Moonglove, because Touch of Moonglove, we should say it's one black instant, +1/+0 Death Touch, right? And then every creature that dies due to that, that player loses 2 life. Yep. So it's disgusting.
Yeah. So that is definitely a card you should run, and that's a outstanding modal card. It'll give you the Death Touch so that you can do the control thing and not die while pressuring life totals. Like, this is the ideal mid-range card in a Mayhem Devil deck. It pairs really well with Crypt Rats as well.
Oh my God!
It's beautiful there. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so the thing I want to conclude the Mayhem Devil discussion with is that it's this pivot thing is more about making wise decisions. So make wise decisions when you're deck building. Make wise decisions when you are playing the game. Like, be very aware of the board state, the board presence. Be very aware of the meta that you're taking this into when you're trying to build the deck. That's going to make you the good mid-range player.
What I like about mid-range too, at least from my experience, and this may not work for everybody or may not be the case for everybody, but learning how to play mid-range, specifically learning how to play mid-range decks better, has made me a better Magic player overall.
Yeah.
Like I've talked to some control players that have trouble playing an aggro deck, and vice versa. Aggro players that have trouble playing a control deck, or like I can't play combo decks, but playing mid-range sort of teaches you all of those things. It teaches you when, like you were just saying, Dave, when to be aggressive, when to be controlling, when to, hide back, or, stand back, when to go forward, that sort of thing. So I think overall it's one of the more, I don't want to say complex, like it's on a pedestal or anything, but it's one of the more interesting archetypes out there. And I think there's a lot to it, instead of just like when you ask somebody like, oh, what's a mid-range deck? They're like early removal and then you win in the late game. Like that's not really what mid-range is. I mean, it's
getting there.
I guess if you boil it down, sure, that's what it is. But
sure,
there's so much more that goes into it, and it involves every facet of the game. Like it's multiple archetypes in one deck almost.
Yeah. The thing that really strikes me here, I think I wrote about this a little bit in the Connoisseurs, that I was advocating for people to play mid-range, but I was doing so with the wrong justification. One of the reasons I like playing mid-range is that you kind of can do all the things. And I like that dynamicism, the ability to enter into a pod, knowing that I have answers to not die to combo. I'm not just like out to dry, and that I have ways to defend my life total with bodies, and I have ways to pressure people through the combat step. And I have the tools in my deck to play a late game when I need to. So I like that. I'm very much a boomer Magic player. I like to get my 3% annual return. I like a consistent deck, and mid-range decks tend to be pretty consistent. And so, the argument I said was that new Magic players should play mid-range. And I think one of the challenges with that is that, what you pointed out is that you actually need to know what's going on at the table really, really intimately. To be a mid-range player does mean that you need to be able to understand exactly what that combo player is doing and how it works. What are your opportunities for interaction, and where can you interact that's going to be the most devastating? It also means that you need to know how to communicate really clearly with the table about your intentions and about where you're going, what you're doing, and also know when it is that you're supposed to pivot to applying pressure elsewhere, for example. So
Yep.
it takes a lot of like format knowledge. It takes a lot of like understanding what answers you have in your deck.
And understanding your opponent's decks as well.
That's right, exactly. You need to really know what those decks are doing because you have limited answers, just like any other deck, but you do have them. And knowing when to apply pressure onto the table, am I developing right now or am I holding up my answers? So
Right.
it's very challenging. It's kind of like, for those of you who mountain bike, it's like riding a hardtail. A hardtail is a bike that only has shocks in the front. And why is that good? Well, it makes you a better mountain biker because every time you run over something that you didn't choose a good line, you're going to feel it in your back. You're going to get immediate responses from it. And when you're playing mid-range, you're going to get punished at times when you choose to, when you deploy your stuff incorrectly. And I think that those lessons are really valuable for somebody who wants to get better at the format, but it is challenging, right? And so mid-range is a way to get better, but I think it is a very there's a lot of skill that's going to go into understanding, and format knowledge is going to go into playing those decks well.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does I want to know how Rilsa pivots between not dying and applying pressure. What's Rilsa's pillar 1?
That's right. So the not dying and applying pressure actually comes partially through the command zone and partially through the 99. And so Rilsa is a really powerful card for like 10 different reasons, but one of them being that it's a card that gets to sit back and block. It gets to be very defensive while also amplifying our 37 creatures. So like over a third of the deck is creatures, and making them dangerous. So, early game, it's pretty clear we're going to be attacking all the time. A Rilsa deck is probably going to even do things as radical as like bartering away the Forge with the initiative as a way to make the other aggro decks more powerful against the people you want to kill. Frequently, I'll let somebody get in with an Impulsive Pilferer or something like that, and maybe even a couple times so that they can get to the Forge and the Trap, knowing that I'm ultimately the one who has control over the initiative. I have it in the command zone. I can regain it anytime I want with my evasive creatures and with my command zone. So there's less of a pivot in Rilsa because we're always attacking, right? Like we're always going to be moving in for the kill, and we're going to be applying pressure. We want to turn on Ninjutsu. We want to be developing our board, attacking all the time, getting these triggers with our ninjas, and venturing with cards like Wanti, Fangblade, Shortcut Seeker, that kind of stuff. So in that sense, Rilsa is always about attacking. The 99 is all about attacking. Rilsa gets to hang back and dissuade people from attacking.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I think that in that case, we're really looking to just play out these cheap cards, increase the pressure every turn, and then hold up stuff like removal. I recently added 2 select counter spells to the deck, Arcane Denial and Dispersal Shield. Dispersal Shield might be better as negate, or negate might want to be in the deck too. But basically just holding up those answers while we deploy our cheap threats, and so that we can do that. So I think it's actually pretty simple. We don't probably need to talk a ton about Rilsa in that context. We're just developing and holding up interaction where possible.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing with my Minthara deck. Like, it really, really, really needs to drag the whole table into the late game to get the most out of those experience counters. Like I said, I think in Pillar 2, which was the first pillar, but it wasn't Pillar 1.
Numbers are fake.
Numbers are fake. So
the mathematician has the right to say that.
That's right. And I trust him. Without those experience counters, the deck is really just an expanded 60-card Orzhov Pauper deck. Like there's nothing to it, without those experience counters. So they've got to be on board. You got to get Minthara into the late game, preferably turns 10 plus, 12 plus, 14, 15, somewhere around there. I mean, you're
wow,
in.
it goes late like that.
It
huh?
goes super late. Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to get into the position to win, it goes super late. Being able to, and then that's when you want to start pivot. Like you mentioned, developing versus holding back. It's going to start to become clear in those late turns what you need to do. But when you finally do pivot to try to closing out the game, it's going to happen fast. You got the Toucaneers that are going to have, each token, each creature is going to have 6+ experience counter, 6+ power. They close things out in a hurry. The main pivot with this deck is when you're ready to actually start swinging with your whole crew, you're going to be able to take out 1 to 2 players at a time. Because by the time you get to those late turns, life totals are going to be low teens or low double digits, single digits. And that's like 1.5 of your creatures to kill a player. Wow. And probably by then you've got some flyers. You've got Soltari Visionary out there with Shadow. Like you're going to be taking out players really, really fast. And then on top of that, sometimes just Stonehorn Dignitary is really good in a Flicker deck.
Jeez, man.
I mean,
so like with Minthara, you're prepared in many ways. You're kind of like building up to this point where everything you have, even if it's small, kind of like Rilsa, isn't small anymore.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just like terrifying. It's like the most enticing thing about it. Like game goes on, your stuff gets nasty.
Yeah, one of the last times I played Minthara, I ended up losing because they Pestilence or Crypt Rats. They wiped the board at a very, very good time for them, which pretty much killed me. But I think I lost a total of 8 creatures, but it was almost 70 power worth of creatures.
Oh,
it was insane.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have you. Well, maybe we'll do a little deck tech kind of a thing where you come on the show and I get to ask you questions about Minthara. This has been on the list for a long time. Must happen.
But yeah, that's it. When Minthara is ready to turn a corner, there's not much that they can do about it. It's super powerful. It can be very evasive. And if you hit the Dignitary in time, they're not going to be able to crack back. So feel free to swing away, Merle, as they say.
Sick.
Yeah. So, Dave, do you want to get back into Vohar?
Yeah. So one of the things that now that I've remembered to read the things that I wrote, one of the things I was supposed to mention about Mayhem Devil's ability to pivot back and forth between the aggro plan and the control plan is that the Mayhem Devil utilizes a lot of blood tokens, which let you loot. So if you draw the aggro card and you're in a control situation, you can pitch it and try again. If you draw the control card and you're in an aggro situation, you can pitch it and try again. So the ability to loot and see more cards is a huge part of this pivoting idea. And Vohar is a looter. So there it is. That's the pivot.
Look at that.
We got there. Yeah,
it's
all coming together.
Just loots.
Have we? We haven't even read off Vohar yet. We should probably do that. So blue and a black, 1/2. You tap. Well, yeah, tell us, Gator. This is Vader. Vader. I called you Vader. You want to be called Vader? Is that cool?
Yeah, I can be Vader.
Sick. Okay, cool. Tell us about Vohar. What is Vohar's actual text?
Yeah, he's a 2-mana 1/2 that taps to loot, and if you discard an instant or sorcery, he does a life drain thing, and then for 2 mana he gives something flashback, which is nuts. So yeah, he's going to be looting all day, every day. You can really do a lot of hand sculpting to make sure that the cards in your hand match what you need to be doing in the game right now. It's a very powerful ability. The other kind of big pivot options that Vohar has is that I mentioned earlier that like a huge part of the win plan for Vohar is Stronghold Discipline, this big life drain spell that just is going to chunk off everyone's life based on the number of creatures they have, which is probably 4 or 5 life for everyone, which is kind of huge.
Big yikes.
Vohar also runs cards like Drain Life and Consume Spirit, which are like big X damage life drain spells. So these are each 2 mana and X. The X has to all be black mana, but this deck favors black more than blue a little bit, so that's not a huge problem. 2 mana and X to deal X damage to a creature or player, and then you gain X life. And ostensibly, they're in the deck to just send to someone's face. A solid, 7 damage straight to the dome in the late game. Maybe that ends the game. Maybe you have to just next turn spend 2 mana with Vohar and do it again. with flashback. Like maybe that's what it takes to actually end the game. But they're there for the end game thing. But the pivot ability here is you can just send 3 damage to creature and then gain 3 life. Like these can be removal spells if you need them to be.
I don't think I've ever not targeted face with drain life.
I
Come to
haven't
think of it.
either, but like it's there. It's
It's an option.
you're
for
allowed.
sure.
The thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a thing that is printed on the card.
Yep. Are you also playing cards like Siphon, Spirit, and Blood
Siphon
Hive?
Soul.
Siphon Soul.
I love Siphon Soul.
Those
so
are like
much.
mini Garys, basically.
Kinda, yeah.
I think so. Let me see which ones I'm actually running.
I think they're the 3 and 4 mana. One, they have the
Blood type-
Gary text where
you gain that much life.
gain
blood,
equal to the drain.
blood type
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like
Yeah,
those
both
are
of them great.
those are not in the deck. My suite here is Consume Spirit and Drain Life, which honestly might be better off as a blood type.
Sure.
Vampire's Kiss gives me the 2 blood
yeah.
tokens so that I can.
Oh,
Bing.
yeah, there you go.
Crushing Disappointment drains everyone for 2 and draws me cards. Stronghold
Yep.
Discipline, and then Corrupt is the big top end.
Oh God, I love Corrupt.
Yeah,
Corrupt
I
is
do
really
too.
good.
So
Jesus.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you playing Tendrils of Corruption too?
No.
Okay. That's the 4 mana instant, deals damage equal to number of swamps in play, gain that much life.
Yeah.
That's only creatures, right?
Yep, that's right. Does not go face.
Yeah. I think I designed that particular suite to just go directly to face, so it didn't come up.
I think
The
Dave
Corrupt is
says-
nice because it's also a 6 mana murder.
It doesn't
But-
go face, doesn't go in the deck.
Yeah, there
Basically.
you go.
Spinning Darkness is the other one that really should be in the deck, but it's
Yeah,
right
spinning.
now.
that's a good
That's
one.
another Spinning Darkness for all you black mages out there. Spinning Darkness, if you are in mostly black or mono black, is literally free Lightning Helix.
Yeah.
I don't know how that card goes not in people's decks. I think it's because people just don't like they're looking black destroy, right? Like color equals
Yeah.
black, rarity equals common, O destroy, and they're just not seeing that you have literally a free Lightning Helix. It's
Right.
so strong. It's so strong. I mean, it makes Thunderclap look silly, right? Thunderclap is the 2 and a red instant speed. You can sack a mountain instead of paying its cost, deal 3 damage to target creature. This is like take the graveyard that you're kind of done with. You do have to track your graveyard order, which is Les Mis, but damn, it's worth it. Hashtag worth it, I say.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's how Vohar's gonna pivot back and forth.
All right.
Amazing.
Useful removal spells and lots of looting.
I think we found ourselves here
Ryan.
at Pillar 4.
Pillar 4? All right. Pillar 4 is how to not run out of gas. So, this pillar, as mentioned earlier in the episode, is talking about the, ever so important card draw, and in some colors, just card advantage, just getting to see things. How do you keep the deck going while it's pivoting between control and aggro? Starting again with Mayhem Devil. Dave?
Mayhem Devil.
Wait,
I
did
like
you
it.
just say Mayhem Devil?
It's me.
Amazing.
I did.
I am the
I'm
Mayhem
pretty-
Devil.
I'm pretty sure that's the best thing that's been said this entire time.
I think so too. Yep.
Like that.
What's sad is that wasn't even intentional. I was just tripping over my words.
No, I think that just means that you just low key genius and you're not in
Yep.
control of genius. It just sometimes
100%.
comes out, right?
Just spills out.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. We're gonna change the intro now, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
we have to. Mayhem Devil's draw suite is the maneuvers you're gonna execute here to not run out of gas are cards like Pointed Discussion, which will draw 2, lose 2 life, and make a blood. Foreboding Fruit, lose 2, draw 2, and make a food. Deadly Dispute, sacrifice something, draw 2 cards, and make a treasure. Like these are the
I
cards.
see a
that just-
trend here.
Right?
Like,
Yeah. Costly Plunder lets you sacrifice bloods or treasures to just draw cards. So yeah, this is just where the Mayhem Devil wants to be. You're sacrificing things, you're creating extra game objects that you can sacrifice for additional triggers. Or yeah. You can go hard on just never running out of gas in Mayhem Devil and always
Yeah,
have
yeah.
options.
And one of the ways that you can do that too, that I find difficult to like maximize on because I don't the way I build decks, I don't tend to want to like put cards in decks that need other cards to be good. I'm pretty conservative that way. It's just kind of the way I build decks. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but if you wanted to with Mayhem Devil, you could play all of the Unearth, all of the Encore, all of
Yeah.
like the Escape, and then what you're doing is then you're using those blood tokens to break parity because you're actually just drawing a card. A really good example of that, and one of my favorite cards to play, and it's actually it's not in my deck. God, I must have cut this. It's so hard to like cut cards from Mayhem Devil because it's just everything is so damn good. It's just like nauseating. It takes me and a team of like 3 people to like sit down where they can like help me be rational about this stuff. But a great example would be like Underworld Ragehound, where it actively wants to be cast from the graveyard. It's a 2-mana 1/3, has to attack every turn. You can escape it for 4. It comes back with what is it? Help me. Is it +1/+1 counter on it?
1+1,
So it comes back as a 4/2.
Comes back as a 4/2
Yeah.
for like 4 mana, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. There's also Underworld Charger. Things like that. There's also some flashback spells. Like, what's that black one that you can flash it back? It's like destroy. Is it something soot?
Yeah, Strangling Soot.
Yeah, Strangling Soot. There's also another one that's there's a couple of flashback. There's like Chainer's Edict would be another one, although I'm a little low on that one in this format. But
7 mana.
that's another way to break. It's a lot. We can afford it, but the main thing is it's only one player, right? Like, generally speaking, edicts, like in all fairness, are there for one player, right? Like, you're doing it because there's one player who gets boned particularly hard by that card. Like, that's why edicts are there. Like, it's a hard to kill creature. They've invested a lot in it, and you make them sack it. They can't even protect it. So, like, that's good. But this is one way you can break parity on Mayhem Devil, is where you build into those things, where you're putting things in the graveyard that actively want to be there, and then you're basically like your blood tokens are reading 1 mana, draw 1, and that's a lot of card draw. That is so much.
Absolutely.
I mean, my Mayhem Devil has 18 spells that draw cards. 18. Like, good God. And I'm actually
not
I'm
including
playing
the blood tokens.
No, that's I think that does include the blood tokens in my case.
All right.
I think it does. Let me see. Maybe. Oh, no, it's more than that with the blood tokens. You're totally right. You know my deck better than I do, apparently. But basically, that's one way you can break parity. There's also the red impulse draw. So, like, I have Reckless Impulse and Ren's Resolve in here. The 1 and a red, sorcery speed, exile the top 2 cards. You can play those cards until your next turn. That's another way to do that.
Awesome. So it sounds like the Mayhem Devil's tank is always full.
It's hard to run out of gas in a Mayhem Devil deck.
It's hard to run out of gas in the Devil.
Yeah, and just... Oh, yeah, go ahead, Liam.
No, go ahead.
One of the other things to keep in mind is that Mayhem Devil frequently doesn't deploy Mayhem Devil until like turn 7 or 8 onward, and so you always just have Mayhem Devil,
right?
Right? It's just there.
It's just there.
And my Mayhem Devil list in particular, because of all the treasure makers, it has 15 ramp spells, right?
Sure.
Like you've got your Prying Blade type effects, you've got like Sticky Fingers, you've got the main rocks. And then you've got cards like Shiny Impetus and Hoarding Ogre, which make more and more treasures. So you can always just cast Mayhem Devil, and that is a card in your hand.
Yeah,
it's generally not a bad idea,
right?
unless you got to be careful though. Mayhem Devil, when it comes down, will frequently make you archenemy, and so be very careful about deploying your Mayhem Devil. Like, really think about what it's going to do to the table. If you are playing it because it gives you the ability to stop a combo player, you can leverage that into other people not stopping you, but frequently it is a must counter, must kill creature, and that's why I don't build around it. Or I'm building around it, but the things are still good on their own, right?
Yeah.
So Rilsa and how it doesn't run out of gas. Rilsa has creatures that draw cards when they hit people. It has creatures that ETB and draw, where we can reuse them with the ninjutsu. We have cards like ninjutsu that allow us to redeploy creatures like our Rilsa so that we can go further into the Undercity. So Cavern Harpy, ninjutsu, Curfew, things like that. You can even play cards like Shrieking Drake, Keymaster Rogue. There's another card like Keymaster Rogue called like Stormcaller Merfolk or something. Basically ways to like pull a card back to your hand and reuse it again. So ninjutsu is kind of a form of like resource advantage in that way, especially if it's drawing cards. We have cards that venture into the dungeon when we hit people. Those are ways that we can keep the gas going, and that's because the Undercity is packed full of resource advantage, whether it's mana that you need, whether it's scry on your upkeep to find more card advantage or more action and make sure you don't draw lands, or whether it's through producing a body, which is basically like better than drawing a card. A 4/1 skeleton token with menace is better than drawing a card. It's insane. Like,
Yeah.
And then there's also just archives. You can just draw a card on the 4th step if you need to, and then Throne of the Dead 3, where you're actually like way better than drawing a card. You're like dig 10, put a creature into play for free, make it bigger and hard to kill.
Yeah,
like just so good. Yeah, I'm low-key obsessed, high-key obsessed with the initiative. So those are some of like the more unusual ways that we draw cards. But in the deck, we also have cards like Keep Watch, which is 2 and a blue, draw a card for each attacking creature. If you're in blue right now, there's a really good argument to be playing this card, along with cards like borrowing 100,000 arrows.
Yeah, because it's each attacking creature,
that's
not
right.
not creatures you control.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it depends. Like if you're a combo deck and you're in blue and you expect to be attacked a lot, Theft of Dreams and borrowing 100,000 arrows are good ways to do that because you will be attacked and it's going to be a very efficient draw spell. Whereas Keep Watch in this deck, I'm attacking. So it's like very efficient for me to just draw a card for each attacking creature. If this is draw 3, it's already above rate. I've never cast it for less than that. Great card. You can also cast it when people attack you. If a TPI player tries to swarm you, just casually draw 11 cards. And
no big deal. No big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah, it's so this one is like defined by these like chip draw where you're like drawing a little bit here and there. Then there's the big ones like Keep Watch, and then the other one is Rush of Knowledge. And I recently posted about this on Twitter. Dude, if you are playing a blue deck and your commander is 3 mana or more, there's probably a decent chance that Rush of Knowledge is going to be good.
Yep.
4 mana is really the sweet spot, right? Because 5 mana draw 3 is on rate, but there's other cards that do that do that 5 mana draw 3. But this deck, it's 5 mana draw 5.
Yep.
So
it's amazing.
Rush of Knowledge is nuts. The cool thing about Rush of Knowledge is that when you have other things in play, it's almost always just draw 3. And that's not bad. So if they kill your Rilsa on the stack to deny you some cards, sure. You draw 3 cards instead because you have like a Cloudkin Seer or an Audacious Thief or Ninja of the Deep Hours, right? But it's a great spell. The last source of card advantage we have in this deck is through the Monarch. And so we have Azure Fleet Admiral, we have Thorn of the Black Rose, Staunch Throne Guard. These are going to be another form of like just drawing more and more cards. And then all of these, except for Azure Fleet Admiral, are also great on the defense to like basically protect that source of card advantage and hoard it for ourselves. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a solid breakdown of Rilsa. What about Minthara, Brad?
Well, we gotta keep the tank full, huh? We gotta not run out of gas. Basically, it's just gonna be all the stuff you would expect to see in an Orzhov deck of this nature. Things like Siphon Mind, Spirited Companion effects, Roving Harper, Inspiring Overseer, that sort of thing. One card that I didn't add until later, which ended up being huge, is Magnifying Glass. Those clues trigger Minthara. They draw you cards. In the late game, it is a superb card. But then I've got the standard Bonder's Ornament, that sort of thing. I searched at I did the highlighter on my Minthara deck, and I just searched draw, and there are 22 cards in my deck that draw cards.
Damn.
And that's not counting like flickering a Spirited Companion or what have you. That's just literally just the word draw is printed on the card. So I've got plenty of ways to draw cards, and I love it. And then, like Ryan, I also love the Undercity. I've got Vicious Battle Rager in there, Underdark Explorer, and just jam through the Undercity, and you're going to make up some serious card advantage for sure. So being empty-handed typically is not a problem with a deck this slow, and then you add in a bunch of draw spells on top of it. You splash in some initiative, some Undercity, and you're sitting pretty good. More likely than not, you're going to run out of mana to spend before you run out of cards in your hand. I've noticed that quite a bit. But it's just straightforward. There's no fancy tricks, nothing crazy. Just hardcore, full retail black draw spells, some ETB creatures that draw you cards, some clues, and the Undercity, and you're just you're going with it. So that's what I got.
Probably playing the cheap sacrifice draws, right? There's sort of village rights, your corrupted conviction,
Yeah, deadly dispute.
deadly
Yep.
dispute,
Yep.
reckoner's bargain, that sort of stuff. And those are so efficient as draw spells.
Yeah,
and the
they're
new
so
one
good.
too, which I won't name for those of you concerned about spoilers out there, but there's another one. There's another one.
Yeah. So yeah, all that stuff is so good. Like it just and at that ratio, 20 plus cards that say draw on them, you're gonna have one in your hand almost at all times. So, and I try to keep them cheap so they're easier to cast. I think Siphon Mind obviously is probably the most expensive draw spell I have in the entire deck. Everything else, I mean, the Magnifying Glass can get expensive because you're spending 6 to draw a card. But if you can time it right, make the clue, investigate on your opponent's instep, and then crack it, on your upkeep or something, that's fine.
Am I supposed to be playing Magnifying Glass in Mayhem Devil? Probably.
Maybe. That's an expensive activated
I
ability.
play a grind.
is.
Minthara is a grindy Orzhov deck, and I still feel like it's too expensive sometimes.
Yeah, it's so much mana to do it. It's
It
like
is 6
it's
mana.
quite a bit
like
worse than Bonner's
4
Ornament.
to make the token.
Yeah, it's 4 to investigate, and then 2 to crack it.
And it's only colorless mana, right? It only produces
Only
colorless.
colorless, and it's 3 to
Yeah.
cast. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does tap for a
even
colorless.
though-
So
Yeah, even though you get the artifact entering and the sacrifice on the clue, I feel like Bonda's Ornament is probably better just for being a straight up card. You don't have to invest the extra 2 mana.
yeah, if you're looking for straight up card draw, Magnifying Glass is not it. But Mayhem Devil maybe. Minthara likes it because the clues are leaving the battlefield, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I could definitely be talked out of it. I'm not completely sold on it, but there are times where it's just like,
Yeah.
Minthara has lived for 4 turns, and every turn I was able to crack a clue. So it just,
Wow.
I got 4 extra power.
Yeah. That's super strong. And the ability to have like an onboard, on command way to trigger Minthara.
Very
is like
reliable
a big part
way,
of the
yep.
deck,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
so and
100%.
a lot of times I imagine you just like accumulate them, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have
Just
a
hold on
bunch
till
and maybe you
later.
have lots of cards in hand, but you just have these things, right?
Yeah, same with like, Commander Sphere, Omen of the Sun, all that stuff. If, Mind Stone, hold on to it until you absolutely need to crack it to trigger your commander.
Yeah.
Blood Fountain, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's how old Minty draws cards. How does Vohar do it, Dave?
So I don't know if we've talked about what Vohar does yet, but in case I forgot to say that earlier, Vohar is a 2 mana 1/2, and his ability taps to draw a card.
Huh. Built-in gas.
There it is. The end.
That's it.
Fascinating.
He loots every.
That's it.
Yeah. He loots.
And you break card
He
parity with
loots.
looting.
Yeah.
He scores.
Yep.
He loots, he
loots his-
scores.
Yeah.
God, Liam is on fire
discard-
tonight.
Damn, dude.
Discard a madness spell.
We have a guy in our or a person, actually, I don't know their gender, but they go by Vector in the Common Connoisseurs, and I've elevated them to Master of Memes because they accomplish a similar thing to what Liam seems to just do on instinct.
Maybe I'm spending too much time around these high schoolers.
The draw card that I've been really excited about lately is called Malcator's Watcher.
Oh my
From,
god,
yeah.
all
I
of
love
you
that
want.
Great
so
card.
much.
Like,
So much.
This does everything you
Yeah.
want. It's a 2 mana 1/1 flying vigilance. When it dies, draw a card. This
Yep.
for a 2 mana
Artifact.
investment. This is an evasive threat that can it will fly right over top of Rilsa to get you the initiative. It'll fly right over top of all of TPI's stuff to get you the monarchy, to just get you all the
We
advantage
don't play
that
the
comes of that.
monarchy.
It'll fly over someone's something to get some kind of monarchy.
Someone.
It'll get in there for monarchy and initiative all day, every day, and it has vigilance. It will block whatever you want it to block,
Yeah,
and then it draws a
vigilance.
card when it dies.
Vigilance on a flying artifact
Vigilance
creature.
on a
Come on.
1/1 flying artifact for 2 mana.
Yeah, been a
That
big
card
fan of
was
that.
in Rilsa for a long time,
It's
or not a long time because it just came out, but
Yeah.
it was that vigilance is amazing.
Yeah.
One another creature that I've been pretty hooked on lately is Guildsworn Prowler.
It's a good
The one that draws if it wasn't blocking or something like that.
2/1 Death Touch.
Yeah.
If it wasn't blocking, draw a card if it died.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
So
Those
good.
are, these are like in my considering list in Rilsa because
Yeah.
they're great. And what's cool about them too is that when somebody like moves to address your board with a sweeper, for example, and they die, you refill.
Yeah,
and
you
and,
sure
and
do.
that's so good. There's another one in that same line along with Malcator's Watcher, which is Oh my God, my brain is mush. Hold on one sec. Let me find it. It's 2 mana, double blue,
Alikos.
Thalakkos Seer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
which is
Mhm.
double blue
That's-
shadow. When it leaves
That's
play,
not
draw
a
a card.
dies trigger.
That's a
That's
leave
It's
the
not a
battlefield
dice
trigger.
trigger.
Battlefield trigger.
So you can ninjutsu
so,
it back to your hand
yeah,
and just
exactly.
That's my
cards for
Thalakkos
days.
Seer is sick.
It's my favorite card in Marshcroc.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Totally.
good.
It's insane.
It's
Yeah,
nuts.
for sure. And actually, another card in that same vein that is really similar to Malcator's Watcher in a lot of ways. But it's the Modern Age.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah,
is a
very
card
good.
that I really, really love. It's a bit tough in Rilsa because we don't have anything from the graveyard that we cast, but like it's 1 in a blue saga. You're gonna loot and you're gonna loot on the first 2 stages, and then you're gonna flip it into a 2/3 flyer. And if you can ninjutsu it or return it back to your hand, you can do it all over again. It's a great body for a good rate. It's just very slow, and so when we play it on turn 2, it's not attacking until turn 5. Which is not really good enough, but it's another good 2-drop evasive value creature.
Yep. Oh, and I just realized one that I added to Minthara that I haven't. It's so new, I haven't even had a chance to play with it yet. But I put in Dawnglare Invoker to like tap down creatures.
Love that.
Yeah.
Funny story about that
plays
one.
out.
I lost a round of a tournament called the Rags to Riches, which is which for a long time was the largest 60-card Pauper tournament in the United States, and it was in Seattle. Super fun. Used to bring a team down there. We would prepare for it a lot, and we would do very well. And the Dawnglare Invoker, there was a Tron deck actually, so using the Urza lands that had Dawnglare Invoker in it to just repeatedly tap down all of your opponent's stuff every turn as a way to utilize all their mana. And they actually won. They won the whole tournament. It was so gross.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was like Stonehorn Dignitary and that, and it was just like,
of course,
dude, you like kill these things, and then they're like Pulse of Marasa, get it back, and you just concede.
Gross.
You just concede. Like it's so sad. So
crazy.
The other way that Vohar doesn't run out of gas, shifting gears a little bit, is
Sure.
I'm not sure if we've talked about what Vohar does yet, but Vohar can sacrifice himself for 2 mana to give a card flashback. You can play anything you want from your graveyard anytime you want. You want to Siphon Mind a second time? Go for it. It costs 6 mana.
God.
Yeah, because it doesn't
so
say,
good.
do this only as a sorcery or only on your turn.
No, it is sorcery.
Oh, is it sorcery
Yeah.
speed?
Yeah.
I
Two mana sacrifice some sorcery speed to cast whatever you want from your graveyard, like Siphon Mind.
Like a Siphon Mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's nuts. And this is one of the coolest things about Vohar is so many people get locked into thinking that Vohar needs to be a combo deck.
No.
Because you're like getting a spell
exactly.
back. And in fact, I've played against Vohar quite a bit, and never a build like yours, Alk. And I've never been impressed with it. It never felt like it was the thing that was going to kill me. The life drain literally didn't matter, and the combo felt clunky. This build you're talking about sounds like what I would want to play if I played Vohar. Like, just grind them to dust. It's kind of like Dimir Witherbloom Apprentice, isn't it?
It's very much like Witherbloom.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
So this is kind of funny because, actually, for those of you who've been sticking with me for a long time, first Let's build I ever did was on Rona, and I ended up being not that impressed because Rona doesn't gain you life. And it's kind of a big deal. Like you need that to stabilize. Vohar does all of that while generating card advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Maybe then
Vohar, there's Witherbloom that just madnesses creatures in play constantly.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
really cool. I like that a lot. We'll definitely have to get you on the show too to talk about your Vohar deck.
It does all the madness because it loots. I don't know if you covered that.
It does loot. It do be looting.
It do be looting.
It's the loot scooter.
It is the loot scooter. There you go.
I love that I get to talk about Vohar's looting in every single one of these pillars.
Yep.
Yes,
certainly.
You really do. Yeah. It's a big part of the deck.
Yeah, it's huge.
All right. And Ryan, TPI, how's it not running out of gas?
Well, TPI just doesn't.
It really doesn't. Oh my God. It just doesn't.
I've had one game, and it was actually, sadly, it was during the CPDH tournament, the Sanctuary Open. I had one game, and this is the only game I've ever played with TPI where I ran out of gas, and I drew
Time to do so.
like 10 lands in a row, I think. So we'll just chalk that up to bad beats.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know that there's a deck in CPDH that draws more than TPI. They're like, how many decks get to run Thoughtcast? Like, how many draw threes do we have just like for
Shared
like draw
discovery.
twos?
Like
I mean, yeah, sure.
you're
Like,
adding Thoughtcast to a blitz deck. Like that
yeah,
is
like
wild.
what the hell?
Yeah.
Like we get to play
Yeah.
we get to play Of One Mind, which is Thoughtcast.
Meeting
because
of the
Of One
Minds.
Mind is
Hello.
stupid. Like you have a commander that literally is a human that makes non-humans. So it's 1 mana draw 2.
Yeah.
You've got 1 mana draw 2 with Thoughtcast because all your tokens are sold. They're artifacts, right? You have Shared Discovery, which is literally just Ancestral Recall in the deck.
Right.
1 mana, additional cast, tap 4 untapped creatures you control, draw 3. You have Treasure Cruise, which is disgustingly easy to enable because what are we doing? We have like 40% of our deck is just going into our graveyard when we cast it.
Yep.
And then backing all, and then we have Meeting of Minds, which like
Oh my god.
Meeting of
so
Minds.
Good.
I've had Meeting of Minds online on turn 3, and it was
Sure.
free.
Mhm.
Free Meeting of Minds on turn 3. And you know what? I hit it off of it? Distant Melody. It was like,
Oh my
"Blah."
god.
Oh my god. So like you've got all these amazing things. You've got ways to find them with cards like Consider, Opt, Ponder, Preordain, Sleight of Hand. These 1 mana card selection spells that basically serve to like create bodies while also finding our really important stuff, like our pingers, our card advantage, our Ophidian Eye type effects, our curiosity, that kind of stuff. And then at the top end, you have these insane things like Keep Watch and Distant Melody. And literally, it's like not a meme, but like to say that I like drawing 10 cards is nominally easy with any one of these cards. When you draw 10, your odds of winning the game are very high. Like you just
Now,
like.
do you run Galvanic Relay in your list?
I don't. I could. A person could do that.
I think it's in mine, but I haven't updated it since we've got all these awesome draw spells. So.
Right.
Yes.
So
Galvanic Relay is in your list.
Yeah.
I will make an argument against Galvanic Relay in my list, and in any list that is doing Curiosity.
That's fair.
TPI as a mid-range deck with access to blue does want to run counterspells. And where those impulse draw effects, draws that basically exile it face up, you have the ability to cast it that turn or the next turn. They not only like put that stuff face up, but you have a limited time frame to use it.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Mhm.
what I don't like about those cards, and this includes Ren's Resolve and it includes Reckless Impulse, which are both great cards, and they actually used to be in the deck until somebody called me out on it and was like, these are kind of bad with like, the other things that you're doing in your deck. And I think that they were right on that. Like even, Experimental Synth. Although Experimental Synth is just 1 mana. So it's like, if you flip something and you don't like it, you can always flip it again and you're going to get a body out of it. And it's 1 mana. So I don't, there's probably a good reason for that too. But we don't play those because we don't want to flip Ophidian Eye when we don't have a pinger. And we don't really want to flip spells that we can't cast or spells that we want to be a surprise, like removal or counter spells.
Sure.
So I don't run those, but I think that in a deck, a version of TPI that is more balls to the wall aggro, where you're still probably playing ramp because the ramp helps facilitate your casting of the TPI and makes bodies. It's like just never bad. You then could use things like that, and instead of having counter spells in the deck, maybe you just have more burn stuff like collateral damage, Heartfire, Artillerize. Reckless Abandon, these like things that go face that can also be removal that cost a creature. So I think that I'm a big proponent of like trying different versions of TPI out, and I think that that those impulse draws fit well in that context. More aggressive. Mine is actually a bit more controlling, I would say.
Sure. That's fair.
So yeah, we've got the Keep Watch, Distant Melody, we've got all the card selection, we've got the big draw spells that are cheap as well. But then the last one is, of course, our Curiosity combo. And we haven't talked about this at all yet, but or not much. But the pingers paired with Ophidian Eye and Tandem Lookout are
gross.
so gross.
Gross.
Yeah, I've never played Curiosity style decks before until TPI. I'm not like some Niv Mizzet enjoyer, but I sure as hell am now. Because you get these turns where you end step Ophidian Eye, you protect your creature with a counter spell, and then next turn you draw 15 cards, like no problem, because these cards say whenever you deal damage to an opponent, you're going to draw a card. Each one of these cards that deals damage with a pinger is going to deal damage to each opponent, so you're going to draw 3 cards off of every card you draw, and it's self-perpetuating. When you draw your first 3 cards, you're going to draw a 1-mana spell, right? Like you're going to draw cheap stuff. And if you didn't draw that one, maybe it's on your next one. And so then you just draw all these cards. And then at the end of your turn, you just discard everything you don't need. And you keep a hand full of like 3 counter spells, 2 removal spells, a protection spell, and a draw spell. And you just like, and you don't even need the draw spell because you have the pinger. We have 2 ways to do that: Ophidian Eye and Tandem Lookout. Tandem Lookout arguably should be in Rilsa too. I'm just thinking about that now with all these like unblockable creatures. It's like really good.
Yeah,
so good. Yeah, that's the other way we don't run out of gas there. And that's really it. I mean, it's a lot, so it's not really just it, but it draws a ton of cards. And that's one of the really fun things about this deck is that you have this soft combo that is pressuring people and gaining you card advantage.
Absolutely.
Yep. And also, just as a heads up, Tandem Lookout, try to kill the Tandem Lookout and not the pinger, because the way Soulbond works is that we're going to be able to repair it with anything else. So
with
I played a game
pinger you put into play.
Right. Yeah. Soulbond allows you, when another creature comes into play, you just Soulbond it. And so I had an instance where somebody was like, they didn't want to take the damage. And so they killed the Firebrand Archer. And then I just played Kessig Flame Breather.
Yep.
And then I just did it again.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. And they felt sad. So,
yep.
Yeah. So yeah, that's TPI. That's how we keep the cards coming.
Yeah, that's not even a full tank. That's like an overflowing tank.
Yeah, it's so much that you're like discarding great stuff.
Sure.
Like all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it turns out when every other spell does what the deck wants to do and draws cards, it's pretty good.
Have you guys seen that movie Zoolander?
Oh, I love it. What is that? A house for ants?
Do you remember that scene where they're just spraying gasoline out of the nozzle all over?
Yes.
That's what Tandem Lookout does in TPI.
Pretty much.
I think I'm gonna need to make some like hackneyed meme of that, where like I do like some image tracking of the face, and I have just like Tandem Lookout on one face and like all of the pingers on the other, and they're just like spraying gasoline all over themselves, and they're so excited, and that's exactly how it feels. You just like you're looking at your hand, and you're like, I have 12 cards, and I can cast 4 more spells, and I'm not going to because I probably want some of those spells.
Yeah, you don't want to discard them all.
Yes, exactly. And it's nuts. I mean, you get these turns where you do that, and then you're just like Massive Raid, end the game. Or like Volatile Claws, end the game. So, yeah, super fun. I love TPI. What can I say? I love what is that? Oh, God, from Anchorman, where Brick
I love
goes,
Lamp.
I love Lamp. I love Lamp. I love Lamp. I love Lamp.
Awesome.
Do you really love Lamp, or are you just saying that because we're all saying that we love something?
I love Lamp.
I love Lamp.
I love Lamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. More insistent on the second time.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Whew. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
This is basically like a quad deck tech.
Yeah.
Just about.
We wanted this to be a little more high altitude, but we got so in depth with these decks that we didn't talk about some of them we were supposed to. So if you want to hear about what we think about Spirit Martyr and Satyr Enchanter, you'll have to join the Patreon and check out the show notes.
That's right.
There you go.
Hit us up on Twitter.
And maybe I can. You probably have lists for it as well, but I'm happy to offer a Satyr Enchanter list if that's. What
absolutely. I can put all
Definitely.
that stuff down into the show notes.
We want to. Yeah, we'll get that linked up in the show notes if you can send us.
Yeah.
Send it that way.
And keep in mind, all the decks that we've talked about too, there's lots of good ways to build them. So the way we're talking about them is not the only way. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind.
I think there's one good way to build Vohar, and there's a lot of bad ways to build it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's fair.
Pretty underwhelming.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you on that. I tend not to. I want to always encourage people to build what they want to build, right? Like this is like the one. Like Derek is always challenging me to, from the RC, and one of the people that frequents my show, is frequently encouraging me to try out casual and playing casual PDH. And I feel like the casual part of me that I've been adopting lately that feels really wholesome is, regardless of whether somebody's deck, whether I think or somebody else thinks that somebody's deck is competitive or not, if they think it is, that's good enough. I want them to play. And they can eat the consequences of it, right? Like if their deck doesn't work out for them, right? Like they can, they know what they're getting into, and they can make adjustments and stuff like that. But increasingly, the reason I'm leaning that way is because I want people to build decks and build it the way they want to build it because they like the way it's built. And so I shy away from saying that there's wrong ways to build decks, because that I don't know. I'm not like some, like wizard seer who can see that a deck is just, oh, this is god awful. Maybe with the exception of Vohar, because you built it, Alcadron.
Yeah, I'm gonna link up
All right.
Madness mid-range Vohar list in the show notes.
There you go.
We'll make sure that you have access to that one. If you want to dig up some combo Vohar lists, you can, but recognize that they're not as good.
As long as you know that going in.
Yeah. And for those of you who made it to this part of the podcast, A, you're a hero. And B, I think you might be wanting to keep your eye out on the horizon for maybe a little maybe we get Dave on my show, and maybe Dave can talk a little bit about Vohar, which will be great because we won't be like changing anything. We'll just be talking about how cool it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And the same with Minthara, because I can't touch Minthara with a 10-foot pole. I'm gonna have to take that deck, and I'm just gonna play that deck because I get scared when I see Minthara from a deck builder standpoint. It looks like Mayhem Devil, or it's like, oh, this has like 400 cards that could go into it, and they're all good.
So we are going to have to change a couple things about Hadar, because over the course of this conversation, I realized that there's a few things missing, like Arms of Hadar.
Oh, you mean in Vohar?
Yeah, in Vohar. What did I say, Minthara? Sorry. Yeah.
You said Hadar.
You said Hadar.
Hadar.
In
Not
Hadar,
Vohar.
we don't have Hadar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. In my Hadar Voldanian Desecrator deck, I don't have Arms
There
of
you go.
Vohar. Nailed it. I'm so good at podcasting.
Nailed it.
This is why I'm a professional.
Professional podcaster.
I feel like I'm in the presence of professionals. So for what it's worth there, you guys are pretty damn great.
Well, I thank you. I think you're pretty damn great, and I'm really grateful that you got to join us for this adventure exploring mid-range decks.
It was.
It's
I
fun.
love me a good mid-range.
This Pauper Commander sphere is just like this really like wonderful space where there's so much cool stuff going on. There's so many great content creators. In fact, just wanted to mention there's another content creator who's just posted in my channel that I just shout them out real quick. It is CPDH TV. So when you get a chance, their name on Discord is CPDH TV. It used to be something else. I can't remember. No, it's gone now. They changed it. But yeah, there's so many cool content creators out there. You all are among the finest. And I've been listening to all your episodes. I work in a warehouse and I get all this time to like listen to stuff, and it's always great to hear your voices coming through my headphones.
That's
awesome.
Very flattering to hear from another of the greatest.
Oh, mad streamer apparently.
Yeah, 113 in 180 days. That is berserk.
Yeah. It is nuts. And that, we have 173 videos total right now, I think. It's starting to get kind of out of control. And I just posted this on Twitter. We actually just last week broke 1,500 subscribers, which I didn't even see it until today. And I was like, oh my God, it's all grown up. So yeah, we're all working together to get those numbers up for everyone. So
awesome. Congratulations on that. You guys earned it. You work hard.
Thank you. Yeah.
I will
Clay is a beast.
Yeah, I'll put all the links to all your content and all your Twitters and everything down into the show notes. But I think we need to move into the outro. As usual, if you need more Pauper Commander talk or have any questions about the format, you can always email the show at thepdhpod@gmail.com. You can head on over to the PDH Homebase's website. That'll take you to their Discord server. You can find Liam and I on Twitter at Pauper Command and Pauper_B, respectively. And you can always find Dave, maybe lurking on Twitter, but usually as the Alcadron, everywhere else PDH is being talked about. Ryan, you want to throw us a couple quick links for everyone to hear, and then I will also put them down into the show notes. Maybe YouTube,
Absolutely.
Twitter, that sort of thing.
Yep, that's right. So youtube.com/common connoisseurs. And on Twitter, I am Papa_Pauper. And you can also find me on Moxfield at Papa Pauper. It's just one word there. And then you can find Clay at the Tryhard7, I believe it is, who also posts great stuff about PDH. And I think that's it. We'll maybe have a link to the Discord as well.
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you want to give the people, I'll throw it down in the details.
For sure. For those of you interested in getting games of CPDH in, you're absolutely welcome to do so in the server. We have a very active community of people playing games. You can just do @LFG to get games there too. And so, it's a great place to hang out and talk about your decks, just like it is over in the PALs. Or sorry, the pod, PALs. Jeez, the PALs too. They're pretty fucking great, aren't they?
PALs are great too.
Pardon me if you have to bleep that out, but definitely deserves the expletive.
Yeah, no, all good, all good. But as episode 51 of the PDH Pod comes to a close, we want to give a big thanks to MTG Brad for letting us use their sweet tunes for the show. And from everyone in here to everyone out there, brew a deck, pivot yourself for the win, and we'll see you in about a week. Say goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.
Peace.
Bye.
See you.
I brought Pauper decks to the party. Pauper. I brought Pauper decks to the party.